Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You sit with the lamp low, the bulb behind a shade that softens its edges into a warm, agreeable glow. The room holds the kind of familiar disorder that reads like company. A folded cardigan on the back of the chair, a second mug cooling on the saucer, with a faint ring where steam once met ceramic, a paperback turned face down, and waiting where you left it. The window is a strip of cool darkness, the city beyond it lighting itself in slow, patient pulses. A few windows bright like distant beacons, an orange streetlight pooling an oval on the curb. Inside, the air is the clean, slightly linen-scented hush that comes from a day's work rinsed away and the apartment settling into evening. Not everything is arranged for ceremony. Nothing needs to be. On the small table by your hand lies your phone, screen dark, edge catching the lamp's warmth. There is a light on the horizon of the surface, a punctuation that you can see only if you choose to lift it. You know it is there before you look. The presence of that small, unread thing is like a quiet instrument in the room, a metronome out of rhythm with this particular hour. It does not command you, it simply exists, settled into the scene alongside a coiled scarf and an extra spoon in the sink. The room has space for that too. You do not reach for it. Your hand rests on the fabric of the cushion, feeling the seam against your palm. The cushion remembers the shape of you from earlier in the evening. It offers the faint, comforting resistance of material that has been leaned into before. You notice the temperature of the air across your wrist, how the skin there is cooler than the warmth near your torso. You watch the slight movement of the curtains, where the ventilation from the building systems moves the fabric away from the window and back, with an unhurried rhythm. Everything breathes quietly. The message waits. There is a texture to the waiting that is not pressure. It is the way a lamp sits on a bedside table while books stack beside it, part of the domestic landscape rather than a demand. You have carried responsiveness across your day like a small bag, zippers tended and rearranged between obligations, and now the bag sits on the floor by the door. You can see it. You do not have to open it. There is room on the couch for that awareness to exist without crowding the rest of the room. You think of the person who might have sent the message in the vaguest of ways, a trace of them in the form of an item nearby, a coaster with a smudge from a hand, a bookmark with a doodle, a pair of socks folded and set on the radiator, as if someone else might come by later and find them. These traces are not explanations. They are small, domestic gestures that make the space feel inhabited by other lives as gently as your own. There is a softness to these remnants, the kind that comes from mutual ease, towels that share the same shelf, a mug that is never far from another, the presence of another's handwriting on a sticky note, the way the music on the playlist shifts from one mood to another without fanfare. All of this implies a history of being seen that requires no cataloging now. A sound comes from outside, the distant muted hum of traffic, an infrequent door closing down the block, someone's laughter far away like a thread of light. It passes through the glass and into the room, and for a moment the space beyond the window feels like a watercolor wash, indistinct and continuous. Inside, a faint ticking from the hallway register mixes with the low, steady pulse of the city. These sounds do not demand anything from you. They are part of the night's texture, and the message on the table is another thread in the same fabric. You return to the book where you left a paragraph paused. The words warm under your thumb when you lift the page, not because they insist, but because they are there, ready. Your attention moves with deliberate slowness, a kind of gentle arithmetic. One breath in, a line of text, another breath out, the lamp's circle of light sweeping over a line of printed ink. Occasionally your eyes drift toward the phone, not with sharpness, but with curiosity, like glancing out to see what the weather has decided to do. There is no judgment in the movement of your gaze. It is simply noting. At times you find the impulse to respond, behaves like an old habit, making its rounds. The thought arrives, tidy and familiar, and then it eases. You notice how different the same impulse feels in this hour. Less like an ember needing to be fanned, more like a candle resting on the table, its wick unlit and content. You sit with that sensation and allow it to be what it is. There is a steadying quality to choosing nothing urgent, to letting the small, bright urgency of the device exist in the same air as the slow, comfortable domestic sounds. There are memories that rise in the near periphery of attention, small and warm. A couch conversation that lasted until the streetlights came on. The feeling of someone folding a sweater and placing it where you could find it in the morning. A kitchen counter holding a tea tin and a jar of spoons, familiar like punctuation in a sentence. None of these memories insists on being explained. They sit alongside the unread message like photographs on a shelf. Soft edges, half-remembered lighting, a quiet narrative that needs no caption. Sometimes you imagine what would happen if you reached for the phone and opened the message right now. That image plays like a brief film. A blue light, a name at the top, a string of words, and the potential of a response. You let that film hang in the air for a beat, and then it dissolves into the room's existing light. The choice not to act is not abstention from care. It is an acceptance of the hour shape. You are present and you permit the and space around you to remain uninterrupted. There is patience here that feels like a domestic skill, the same one that knows when to leave a dish to soak and when to fold it into the cupboard. As the evening moves, the lamp's light seems to bend a little more toward the book and a little less into the corners. Shadows collect in the folds of the curtains, and the room narrows into itself in a comfortable way. The two mugs on the saucer share their coolness now, their ceramic skins touching. You rest your fingers along the rim of one and remember its warmth earlier, how it reflected a conversation that was full and necessary. That memory is allowed to exist without requiring further corroboration. The space in the room holds both what was said and what was left unsaid. There is a particular privacy to this hour that feels like a protective cloth draped over the apartment. It softens the edges of the day and keeps the night from needing to define itself. You move through it with the same care you would use to close a book and set a bookmark inside. Gently, with acknowledgement of the text, without hurry. There is no list of things to accomplish right now. No obligation to match the pace of messages or expectations. The presence of the notification is simply another presence in an already gently crowded room. You think of the small rituals that mark shared living. A hand towel folded in a specific way. A playlist that skips to a certain song when someone else arrives. A lamp left on because two people prefer its glow. Each of these is a quiet language that requires no explanation. They are gestures that hold personal meanings, carried between people, and stored in the shapes of furniture and the placement of cushions. In this light, the unread message is one more quiet gesture, an emblem of attention that can wait without losing value. Night steps more fully into the corners, and the city's pulse softens. You stay where you are, cradled in that cautious, domestic quiet. The phone remains on the table, a still object among others, its silent promise of contact, not demanding to be fulfilled. The room surrounds it and you alike, warm, private, and paced by the slow workings of a familiar environment. You hold this hour lightly, letting the message be part of the atmosphere, rather than a thing to be resolved. There is a kind of company in that, and you rest in it without having to explain why. You move through the room as if remembering it for the first time, in the same way you might notice a favorite song halfway through. Familiar lines, but new phrasing when the light is thinner. The floor under your feet holds the echo of movement from earlier, a small scuff near the rug, the way the cushion has a little slope where you always sit, the way a mug was set down with the left hand until the right hand found something else to do. The lamp by the sofa gives you a warm circle of light that is patient. It does not demand attention. Beyond the glass, the city keeps to its distance, a low constellation of apartment windows and a highway that runs like a sigh. The night air tries the handle of the window and settles into the room with a coolness that cleanses without expectation. On the coffee table, the phone sits with its screen dark, a little rectangle of reflective glass that holds the ceiling like a tiny mirror. You notice the outline of a notification you refuse to read, not because of discipline, but because the dark is doing exactly what it needs to do. The phone is not an urgency. It is an object that stays in one place while your thoughts wander around it. Nearby, a second mug carries the ghost of someone else's tea, a residue of conversation that has gone gentle and quiet. It smells faintly of citrus and something floral, a scent that comforts the room in a way words cannot. The mugs, the dishes, stacked in a neat, lived way. By the sink, the folded sweater draped over a chair like an absent person who will return. These are small, steady proofs that life happened here and that everything has had its place. You let your hand rest on the arm of the sofa, the fabric familiar and slightly worn in the exact ways you like, threads softened by habit. Your fingers trace a seam without intent, and in that tracing there is no hurry. The building breathes around you. The pipes carry a slow, hollow music. Somewhere above there is the turn of a dryer and the gentle bass of a late-night radio. Outside, a taxi slides away, with its lights dissolving into the distance, and the city keeps on doing whatever it does. None of it presses on you. The sounds are passing things that the room accepts and then lets go. There are traces of the day lying folded on the back of a chair, a jacket with a pocket where your hand instinctively tucks small things, a scarf where you once looped it twice and then forgot you had been cold at all. A pair of books is stacked near the lamp, tops smeared with the residue of thumb and note and habit. You notice the way the pages lean just so, like bodies that have learned how to rest without collapse. Each object is ordinary and intimate at once, a hair tie tucked under a coaster, a pen that still has ink at the end, a ticket stub that never became a story. The room keeps these things with a calmness that suggests that meaning can be small and patient. Your breath is a quiet metronome, and the rhythm invites thoughts to come and go. It is not a tidy calm, it is a softness that has room for everything without needing to name any of it. You hold a small, private history in your chest. Tonight's laughter, a glance, something left partially said at the edge of a text. Visibility, earlier in the day, pressed you into shapes you had not always expected to occupy. The residue of that letting scene is like a warm fabric draped around your shoulders. You feel the weight of it without it being heavy. There is a knowing in your body of how to be present and how to step away, both at once, and you move in at that in-betweenness with a quiet competence. The lamplight makes the room glow in a way that is forgiving. Shadows lean into corners but do not hide anything. They simply soften the hard edges. A curtain shifts occasionally when a breeze finds the glass and then withdraws, as if it, too, is reluctant to do more than whisper. The air smells faintly of detergent and the citrus from the other mug, a domestic mixture that says someone cared enough to put things away, and not much more. You do not need grand gestures tonight. The smallness is enough. The clink of a spoon against ceramic when you stirred your drink earlier. The tiny crease in the blanket where your knees pressed. The faint warmth left on the cushion where you sat. Each small thing is an unspoken companion. You notice the space the dark phone occupies on the table, and you notice, too, the way your thumb sometimes drifts toward it and then stops, as though remembering that messages have their own schedules. There is no urgency in that pause, only a capacity for holding. The room is arranged in such a way that hesitation is not a failure, but an element of the furniture, like cushions or curtains. The silence that gathers is not empty. It is a soft fabric around the sounds that exist. The neighbor's distant music folded into itself, the hum of the refrigerator that keeps things steady, the small, almost inaudible settling of the building as it calls the day complete. You can see the outline of a city light against the window and the faint reflection of the lamp. And in that layered vision, there is a sense of depth that comforts. The world outside is active and patient. It does not need you to reconcile its movements with yours. Your choices, made in small increments, leaving a message unread, folding a shirt, choosing the mug with the chip, are part of the room's slow conversation. You do not write a narrative that ties up every loose thread. Instead, you live with the threads, letting them rest how they will, and the room accepts them without commentary. There is a quiet generosity to the way you move when you allow things to remain unresolved for a night. It is not avoidance, it is presence without demand. The lamp keeps its even glow while you sit with the suspended space between reaching and resting. You watch the reflection of a streetlight slide slowly across the ceiling, and as it moves, you find that your posture softens in response. The cushion gives way to the familiar curve of your hip. The book beside you shifts a fraction. The mug leaves a warmer circle on the table. Each small alteration is an agreement with the present moment to stay as it is for a while. You sense the evening's earlier visibility as a warmth, a presence that has changed the texture of the room in ways you cannot list. It is woven into the air like a scent that you cannot quite name but recognize when it moves past you. The room holds it without fuss. There is no pressure to curate your reactions, no need for tidy responses. You carry simple gestures, a hand over a mug, the tilt of your head toward the window, a foot tucked beneath you on the sofa, as if these acts themselves are enough to sit with tonight's aftermath. When you rest your chin on the back of your hand and look at the silent phone, the glow of the lamp and the distant city make a small private stage where no one is expected to perform. The room is uncomplicated in its care. It offers surfaces to put things down, a light to read by if you decide to, and a quiet that keeps watch without intrusion. The presence of another life, hinted at by the second mug and the sweater over the chair, is close but not immediate. It suggests continuity rather than completion. The night is ample enough to hold the edges of whatever you have left undone. You let the moment breathe. The sound of a vehicle passing becomes an unremarkable punctuation mark. Your shoulders, which had kept a line of tension, ease toward the upholstery. There is a steadiness to this slowdown, an unhurried acknowledgement that not every thread needs to be followed to its end this evening. The room retains its ordinary warmth, its little ineffable proofs that you are allowed complexity without adjudication. You sit there with the dark rectangle of the phone between you and the wider world, and the space around you remains hospitable, patient, quietly luminous. The room feels like an afterthought in the gentlest sense. Light from the street collects in a soft, diluted band across the curtains and the edge of the rug. It diffuses into everything, making the ordinary furniture look as if it has been placed there, with intention and patience. You move slowly enough to notice the small arrangements that came together during the day. A mug with faint lipstick at the rim, another mug tucked near the sink with a small ring of cold steam that tells you it was set down and forgotten for later, a scarf folded and left over the back of a chair, a paperback whose spine remembers, the page you last held. These traces sit without accusation. They suggest company and presence, not evidence to be judged. There is a second mug because someone sat across from you earlier, because feet found their way under the same blanket for a while, because conversations were the kind that don't require a record. The room keeps those things like quiet witnesses, their silence steady and soft. Your phone rests face down on the coffee table. The back of it catches a strip of light and looks almost like a small black stone set among the coasters and mail. There is a slight weight in the thought of it, an expectation that might be answered, a message hovering somewhere between being read and remaining unread, but it does not pull at you like a physical thing. It is beside you, a presence that could be tended if you chose, and also something that can simply be a surface for the light. You place a hand on the cushion beside you, feeling the give of foam and fabric, the familiar impression your body leaves when you shift. The cushion remembers your shape and offers it again without asking for anything in return. Outside, the city exhales in long, patient cadences. Car lights move slowly and intermittently, painting transient lines on the window glass. At times, a laugh arrives from the street below, or an elevator chime floats up from the building's corridor. Then the sounds return to a distance that feels almost like texture, less a thing to respond to, more an ambient wash that colors the night. Wind moves through the alley, brushing at loose pieces of paper or a forgotten napkin, and the curtains stir slightly, a soft movement that reminds you of a hand passing by. The air has cooled. The apartment holds this coolness alongside the residual warmth of bodies recently present. The combination is pleasant, like sheets that have been warmed, then turned down, waiting for the efforts of resettling. You notice how your breathing slows without you doing anything about it. There is no rush in your chest, just a quiet attentiveness that allows you to catalog small details. The faint scent of detergent lingering on the pillowcase, the metallic note from a spoon left in the bowl, on the counter, the way the lamplight pools thickest where it reaches the book on the table. These particulars form a kind of map you can follow with your eyes and your fingers. You trace the rim of the coffee table with a fingertip and imagine the arc of the day condensed into these objects. The day is not erased by the night. Its edges have softened. Anticipation sits nearby like the second mug, present, a companion with its own warmth. It does not press, it nudges gently, an almost inaudible rhythm where your attention can go if it wants. There is a message in the space of your phone, or perhaps the idea of a message, and it lives in the same quiet field as the rest of the room. You sense the possibility that an answer might be expected, and you also sense that it is perfectly permissible for that expectation to wait. The thought of replying does not tense you. It simply exists as one of many threads knitting the night. You hold that thread without pulling it taut. Your eyes move to the window and rest there because looking out feels like a passive, safe activity. Buildings across the way are mottled surfaces of varying light. Some apartments lit warmly, others dark and private. A neighbor's curtain occasionally opens, a silhouette passing for a moment as domestic life continues. In small, unremarkable ways. None of it demands you participate. You watch as the city carries on with its soft routines, and there is a comfort in witnessing that you are part of a larger, quieter hum. It is a communal hush. It does not isolate you so much as set a shared tempo. There is a slipper abandoned near the doorway, one turned over as if someone had stepped out quickly and reconsidered. A jacket hangs on a hook, its sleeve folded at the cuff from habitual wear. These are the sorts of things that make a place feel lived in without needing to be announced. They remind you of other faces that have occupied the same table, other hands that have reached for the same sugar jar. The memory of those hands is not sharp. It is a soft-edged warmth that sits at the corner of attention. It makes the apartment feel like a room where belonging is ordinary, rather than something to be proved. You think about the quietness between people, the way a conversation can taper into companionable silence, the way presence itself can be a kind of response. There is a tenderness in those pauses that does not require explanation. The same gentle logic applies now. A message can wait on the dark surface of the phone without diminishing the value of whatever was shared earlier. Anticipation does not demand resolution to prove itself. It is content to exist as a neighbor in the room, offering company without insistence. Hands find the blanket folded on the arm of the sofa and tug at it, feeling the texture of the weave. You move into the familiar shape of a comfortable evening, not deliberately creating mood, but settling into rhythms that have become part of this place. The lamplight casts a safe arc over your lap, turning fabric and skin into warm fields. You notice the pattern of the throw, the little imperfections in the stitching that tell you someone chose it because it reminded them of something: an old textile from a market, a thrifted find, a purchase that felt right in the moment. These decisions, small and private, collectively say more about belonging than any explicit declaration ever could. Thoughts drift. They do not require your immediate attention. A line from a conversation earlier might float up, then blend into the sound of the radiator clicking as it contracts and cools. Memories have an ease to them in the dark. They lack the sharpness they sometimes have in daylight, which lets you observe them more kindly. You can field each recollection like a gentle knock at the door. Notice it, open a sliver, then allow it to remain on the threshold without ushering it all the way in. In this space, unfinished interactions fold into the texture of the room, rather than insisting on completion. At some point, your hand moves toward the phone, not with obligation, but with a casual curiosity. You let the fingers hover and then return to rest. It feels unremarkable to leave it where it is. There's an unforced permission in that small motion, that you may answer later or not, and either choice will slide into the night with the same quiet dignity. The anticipation moves with you, like the soft echo of someone else's footsteps in the hall, present but not overtaking. You linger in the edge of both, the day and the night, the apartment cradling that balance. There is no neat resolution required here, no tidy ending pressed upon any small worry or expectation. The room holds the unresolved as though it were simply another soft object, something to be set down and left undisturbed. You breathe again, slow and even, and allow the feeling of being accompanied by small things to be enough. The city keeps its gentle rhythm outside the glass. The mugs keep their secondness on the table, and your phone rests, unlit, content to be a dark, quiet place for a message that can wait. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. The apartment holds the night in the way rooms always do when the day has been given back to its own business. Light is small and patient. A lamp on the side table that throws a pool of amber across the couch where the cushions keep the shape of where you sat a while ago. Beyond the window, the city breathes slowly. A distant neon blinks. A traffic light turns red, then green and red again, with the same steady rhythm. Those movements feel far enough away to be gentle, like a friend walking along the street below, rather than an urgent voice calling up through the glass. Your phone rests on the coffee table, face down, its dark glass reflecting the lamp's glow in a soft, private way. It is, in this moment, simply another object that caught a rhythm with your hands earlier and then settled. The sound of the world has narrowed around it, so that you almost forget it is capable of asking for attention. The silence around the device is not empty. It is made up of small, familiar things. The faint hum of the building's pipes, the slight scrape of fabric as a jacket tucked over the back of a chair relaxes its shoulders, the far-off murmur of someone closing a door several floors down, the sound smoothed by distance and night. You notice the second mug on the counter, the one whose handle still holds the warm grease of a thumb where someone else rested theirs earlier. It's not a sign to be explained. It is evidence of a shared pause, the easy hospitality of a space used by more than one presence. A scarf folded over the arm of a chair carries the faint trace of perfume or cologne. Not loud, only a nuance you register when you lean close to move it. A stack of well-loved paperbacks by the bedside lamp leans the way stacks do after they have been consulted and then set down, each spine softened by the thumbings of someone who returns to the same lines for comfort. These things feel like company without conversation. You sit with the phone still there, and your hands find the softness of the couch's armrest. The fabric remembers the shape of your palm. It presses back, a small, steady resistance that is almost like a hand. When you tilt your head, you see the streetlight through the curtain, the light pooling, and then being swallowed by the heavier dark beyond. The room smells of the evening, a linen-scented spray that touched the sheets earlier, the faint lingering of the meal that was made and eaten without fuss, the clean, dry smell of folded sweaters waiting for the cooler morning. Night has its own domestic scent, a blend of what was and what is allowed to rest. There is no pressure to map the past hour into an explanation for tonight. The thought of a message, something that flickered on the screen, a name, a punctuation, a half-formed sentence, is the sort of thing that might make a sound in the mind, like the memory of a song you hummed earlier. It sits quietly in the background, an ember, not tended but not forgotten. The phone is dark. The room holds that darkness with a kind of permission. Permission is a soft word that feels almost formal in your head. But here it is, just a fact. The shape of the room permits the pause. You do not have to translate the shape of time into the shape of a reply. Outside, the wind moves some loose papers on the stoop across the way. The rustle is delicate and almost private, as if the city itself prefers to make small, unobtrusive noises at this hour. Inside, the lamp throws a circle of warmth that touches a framed photograph on the shelf. A candid, unself-conscious capture of someone laughing mid-bite. Edges softened in the frame. It suggests a history of gatherings that were ordinary and kind. You remember the laughter, not as a thing that requires a reply, but as a texture in your memory, like the thread on an old sweater that keeps the garment whole. Your breath is steady, not a practice breathing exercise, nothing formal, simply the natural rhythm of an evening body that has used its muscles and now rests in them. The body has a vocabulary that is not verbal. It speaks in warmth, in muscle release, in the way shoulders lower when the plans for the next day can wait behind the window. The couch's fabric cools a degree as the lamp spreads light, and you notice the small, immediate coolness where your hand left the cushion. It anchors you, the tangible proof that you are here, that you are here, that presence need not be performance. Books cast soft shadows on the shelves. The titles are familiar, their edges smoothed from rereading. They are not anchors to a persona, but artifacts of times you wanted company from words instead of motion. A sweater folded on the back of the chair has a small phantom crease where it held your shape earlier. It carries the comfortable evidence of someone who moves through the apartment as if it is a shared map. The apartment does not demand more explanation than that. It is content to be an environment that has hosted things and hosted them quietly. You might notice the faint vibration of distant life. Someone's laughter filtered through an elevator shaft, a bicycle bell, the soft thump of a neighbor settling into their own night. Those sounds do not press. They are part of the city being itself, and your space receives them like letters tucked at the edge of a table. They remind you that others are resting in proximity, that other rhythms exist without needing your attention. Your phone, still face down, is simply the medium those other rhythms could use to call you back into conversation. But tonight, the medium is a still object. It keeps its own quiet. In the kitchen, a kettle that was used earlier cools on its base, a small ring of condensation forming where it rested. You move to pour the remaining tea from the pot into the sink, and your hand brushes against the rim. The water in the pot happens to be too warm for the moment you choose to drink again. It will be fine later. There is no obligation to timetable anything. The idea of time loosens at night. It becomes more about the sequence of small actions, the way you fold the scarf, the way you set the mug aside, than a schedule demanding a response. You rest with the knowledge that silence transforms as it wants. It is not empty. It is a presence with textures and items and half-read books and the shadowed face of a phone. It is the sound of rooms breathing and the memory of being seen earlier in ways that do not need replaying. The phone could light up, a message could appear with a name or a string of words. But for now, the phone is a small dark mirror lying on the table, reflecting back the lamp's soft glow and the ceiling's quiet. It is part of the room's composition and not the conductor of it. There is a private kind of closeness that comes from spaces that have shared histories. The mugs, the scarves, the books. They are small, domestic markers of lives that intersect without ceremony. You feel that closeness like an even temperature across the shoulders. It is a warmth that does not demand language. It is simply the evidence of evenings spent with another presence, or with memories of those presences, and the allowance to let the present be what it is. You let your attention drift over objects in the room, over the gentle buckle of a belt hung on the coat rack, the way a rug has bunched slightly near the door, the muted tick of a wall clock whose sound is more texture than timekeeping at this hour. The apartment is a collection of gestures rather than declarations. It holds what was said earlier, as if those sentences had been placed on a shelf. They exist, visible in the form of a warm cup or a rumpled sleeve, and there is no need to return them to sentence form tonight. In this room, the dark face of the phone is a humble thing. It is neither invitation nor demand. It is an object that has been used throughout the day for so many small acts, arranging plans, sending quick smiles, checking maps, and now it rests. You rest with it. The silence around it shapes itself like a soft garment, pliant and steady. You continue to exist in the room's slow rhythm, breathing with the evening, letting thoughts of answered and unanswered messages remain a gentle hum rather than a question that must be resolved. The night is patient, and it keeps the phone's darkness company as easily as it keeps yours. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You are aware of the way your body rests into the frame of your evening, not flattened by obligation, not reaching for anything urgent, simply arranged along familiar contours. The couch remembers the shape you make when the day has been long. The armrest holds the imprint of an elbow. A throw, folded and slightly askew from earlier use, keeps one knee warm. There is a coolness where your bare forearm meets the fabric. A small, neutral fact that grounds sensation without demanding action. In the low light, the room's edges soften. Lamps throw warm pools that stop a few inches short of the window, leaving an even, small dark, where glass reflects city shimmer. Beyond that, a skyline rearranges itself slowly. A handful of lights, a changing smear of traffic, the occasional lift of a distant elevator. Everything is happening without insisting on your attendance. A phone sits face down on the side table, its screen a calm, unlit rectangle. You feel the awareness of it more as texture than as summons. The cool face of glass, the faint scratch, where a ring once caught it. The small weight that is neither heavy nor insistent. Somewhere inside the room, a mug from earlier sits with the ghost of steam when you move it. A second mug is nearby, rinsed and left to dry with a spoon nested inside. An evidence of someone else's presence earlier in the night, or a visitor who stayed long enough to leave their habit behind. The trace doesn't require explanation. It simply exists as part of the domestic map. 2 mugs, a folded jacket tossed on a chair, a stack of books with a bookmark peeking like a small private flag. These are the quiet signs of lives overlapping, of choices that didn't need to be announced. Your hands rest, or on your lap. They know what to do when nothing urgent is happening. They find a rhythm of small motions, smoothing the throw, tracing the seam on a cushion, feeling the grain of wood along the edge of the table. Each contact is unremarkable and steadying. It is not a search for meaning, but a gathering of small attentions that fill the space between breath and thought. Time loosens around these actions. Minutes stretch without pressure, like the way a light fabric will pull and then settle back into place. There is a kind of permission in this looseness, one that doesn't have to be named. It simply sits beside you, like a second body that doesn't talk. Sounds arrive with distance. A bus releases at the end of the block, and the sound rolls along the street like a slow exhale. Pipes in the building sigh and settle, their mechanical conversation part of the night's background. Somewhere across the hall, a neighbor moves an armchair. The sound is muted against plaster and a strip of hallway carpet. Each noise is small, familiar, and unintrusive, folding into the room like soft paper into an envelope. You notice them and hold them without judgment, like cataloging the ornaments in a room where no one expects performance. The night outside is active but not urgent. It carries on with a patient continuity that allows your interior space to be steady. You think of messages, but not as tasks. They are present in the air, like unopened mail, like a letter casually left on the kitchen counter. There is a grayness to the idea of reply tonight, an understanding that nothing here demands a response. The thought floats and settles. If a message waits, it waits in the safe margin of the night. It does not press against the eyelids or the ribs. The content of whatever was sent remains beyond the immediate scope of obligation. You let that be. The sensation is less an act of will than a recalibration of priority. Not a renouncement, but a gentle reprioritizing. The night is small and kind in this way. It preserves the quiet as an adequate container for whatever remains unsaid. There is an intimacy to this stillness that looks a lot like domestic familiarity. The lamp casts the same warmth you have come to rely on. The kettle, cooled since it boiled, leaves a faint scent of citrus detergent that mingles with the neutral air. A coat, slung over a chair, remembers a shoulder that used to fill it for a moment tonight or last week. It keeps the scent of the person who wore it in the fibers, an unspoken artifact of closeness. These details are tender without spectacle. They feel private, not performative. The soft evidence of shared time that doesn't require an audience. The room holds them like small holdings in a ledger, each entry quiet and unurgent. Your breath moves without instruction. It neither hastens nor slows at the behest of thought. It keeps the evening at an even pitch. Maybe you trace the rim of the mug, feel the warmth that was there and is now only memory. Maybe fingers find the edge of a photograph, tucked between pages, not to relive a narrative, but to note the weight of that paper in your hand. There is a quality of acceptance to these small acts, not the loud, declarative kind, but the private kind that registers things and lets them exist. No inference is required. You are allowed to hold an object, notice a face, consider a phrase that came earlier in the day without resolving it into a plan. The apartment seems to listen without expectation. Curtains are drawn just enough to keep the city private, but not so much that you sever the rhythm of outside life. Through the fabric, light washes like diluted paint across the wall. Shadows move slowly, as if a distant wind is deciding on them. The air carries a scent of clean fabric, a faint trace of an evening meal, and the cool metabolized warmth that lingers after movement has ceased. All of these elements combine into a kind of companionable quiet, the kind that acknowledges everything and asks nothing in return. You are allowed to be small tonight. The metrics of responsibility, of timely replies and tidy resolutions, are not active here. Instead, there is room for diffuse noticing, a thought that passes and takes its time before deciding whether to return, a feeling that bends and keeps to itself. Being small is not a diminishment. It is an appropriate scale for this hour. It makes space for nuance, for the unstructured drift of sensation that does not require tidy endings. The city hums, and you are a small island within it, stable and unpressured. Time in this part of the night feels like a gentle current. It moves you without forcing a destination. You become attuned to the slow transitions, from the tip of a finger to the warmth of a mug, from the shadow of a curtain to the faint ping of an elevator outside. These transitions are not dramatic, they are the very fabric of an evening, unallocated to duty. There is an odd luxury in not having to manage every incoming thing. The absence of immediate handling is its own presence, offering a soft, deliberate unbusyness. When you look at the phone again, it remains an object among objects. You notice its edges, the way the case picks up a smear of light. You notice how the room holds it without making it central. The message that arrived earlier sits in a space that is not demanding but patient. There is no pressure to form an answer tonight. No need to reconstruct the day's threads into a response. You can allow the message to rest where it is, part of the room's quiet contents. It is a small choice made through non-action, and somehow that is complete in itself. The hour deepens without ceremony. Warm light and cool window glass, a faint chorus of distant traffic, the comfortable clutter of a lived-in room, all of it composes a gentle, non-judgmental atmosphere. You rest within that composition, neither solving nor neglecting. The body recognizes a lack of necessity to respond. The mind relaxes into a widening margin, and the evening keeps its measured pace. There is no tidy resolution, no tidy demand. There is instead a sustained allowance, the permission to be present with the small, uninsisted things that make up this late hour. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You are sitting with the lamp on low, the light pooling in a soft coin on the side table. The phone is face down beside a coaster with a faint ring of coffee, its dark rectangle an island of muteness. Outside the window, the city breathes in long, patient cycles. Inside, the apartment keeps its small arrangements of life. A second mug stacked in the sink, a sweater folded over the back of a chair, a slim stack of books where someone left a bookmark slipped between 2 pages. These things sit exactly where they were left and do not ask anything of you. A thought about later moves past like a bird across the glass. Maybe you will answer a message, maybe you won't. The notion doesn't clutch or press, it simply passes, leaving a small, clear space where attention rests for a moment and then shifts. You notice how easy it is for thoughts to arrive with the taste of tomorrow already on them, plans and possibilities carried like envelopes, but how separate they are from the room's steady shape. The night holds them without needing to fold them into its own rhythm. You find yourself picturing a variety of small futures in an unfocused way. One of them has you standing by a river, holding a takeout carton in one hand and a warm drink in the other, talking quietly with someone whose laughter sits just beyond full detail. Another imagines your phone lighting up and your thumb hovering, the reply forming and dissolving like breath on glass. Another imagines a friend dropping by with an extra blanket, the two of you making a little nest of cushions on the floor and sharing the silence, the way one shares a cigarette on a balcony, without rush, without explanation. These images arrive and leave like notes in a melody that you don't have to follow. There is a small bowl on the console with loose coins and an extra key. You remember where that key is supposed to go, the apartment another person once held for a while, and you let the memory be there without needing to make it into anything more. The sweater you folded is a color you chose because it matched another sweater in your closet. There is no scene of performance around that choice, only the quiet satisfaction of objects that fit. The stacked dishes in the sink are evidence of a meal that lasted too long, everyone talking over each other, and the kind of closeness that leaves soft traces on plates and soft echoes in rooms. The evidence is ordinary and kind. It does not demand a statement. Your attention wanders to the small sounds, the building settling, a neighbor, a returning home and closing their door with a careful footfall, a bus sighing at the corner stop. Each sound is a punctuation mark in the night, not a summons. You listen and let them happen. They do not pull you toward any necessary action. They are company without agenda. A domestic radio hums faintly somewhere, an old show perhaps, warming the edges of the silence. It is the sort of background that makes the apartment feel lived in, not staged. You notice the texture of your own hands resting in your lap, the coolness of the ceramic mug when you lift it, the threadbare softness on the arm of the chair that remembers your shape, the natural weight of your legs, the way a foot presses into the rug, the tiny crease where a blanket folds. All of these are small, measurable things that require no explanation. They are just what is, and you move gently through them. The room cradles this uncomplicated presence. There is a privacy here that feels like an agreement between the space and you. It will hold whatever comes, and it will not force the moment into any other story. Thoughts of later arrive again, different in flavor. You picture putting on a jacket and stepping into a late city rain, or choosing instead to stay in and wash the dishes slowly, letting the warm water run over your hands while a playlist you love murmurs somewhere. You may imagine sending a message later in careful lines, or letting the conversation wait until a new day brings new context. These are unhurried possibilities, like postcards on a mantle. They are there to be looked at, not necessarily mailed. You imagine a condolence text that turns into a long conversation, or a short check-in from someone who is curious about how you are. You think of writing back with sunlight in your teeth, and making a plan that sits loosely on the horizon. You think of not writing at all, of leaving things suspended like leaves on a stream. None of these choices weighs heavily. They are simply threads in a larger weave, and the weave itself is more patient than any single thought. You feel no pressure to cut or tie any thread tonight. There is a sense of chosen silence around certain open tabs. A partially typed message, an email draft, a saved event you keep returning to in your mind. The drafts live in the same space as the half-folded laundry, uncompleted things that do not shout for completion. The night softens their edges. A postcard leaning against a candle might bring a memory of a recent gathering, voices and warmth, and a certain laughter that lingers. The memory arrives like scent, and then it settles. No need to take it apart or explain it to anyone. You become aware of how time feels elastic in these hours, close and intimate, then suddenly broadened to include all the small possible tomorrows. Nothing forces a decision. The options keep their lightness because there is no insistence on choosing now. Even the idea of a future plan is more of an accompaniment than a command, something that walks beside you rather than in front, something that does not pull. The room remains as it has been, patient and unchanged. The lamp throws the same warm pool of light across the rug. The city glows in predictable, muted tones, and the objects you know well keep their places. There is a familiar order here that feels like an unspoken agreement between your history and your present. Chosen family photos, not loudly displayed, but comfortable in frames on a bookshelf, nod quietly to nights like this. A scarf draped on a coat hook belongs to someone who has spent mornings here, who has borrowed sugar and returned it. These traces are not announcements, they are small truths that share the space with you, as if to say that privacy and presence can coexist. Your attention slips from one thought to another without friction. You imagine various ways that tomorrow could begin: text, call, unexpected visit, a plan to finally go to that gallery you've been meaning to see. These scenarios flicker past and are allowed to be only that: bright, delicate, not insisting. You do not have to line them up like tasks. Tonight they are ornaments hung lightly on the branches of your attention, each one swinging a little in the hush. There is a kind of permission in this room that has nothing to do with words. It is felt in the way you do not have to explain why you have left a coffee cup on the table, or why a sweater leans toward the light. It is felt in the way the night does not demand the answers your daytime demanded. You move slowly through these pockets of thought, letting your mind wander and return without judgment, without story. The small city lights beyond the window blur into a watercolor wash. You let the thoughts that want to go forward gather as they will, and those that don't remain simply as memory. There is no rush to resolve anything. The house hums its steady note, the lamp keeps its soft vigil, and your thoughts continue their gentle drift. You stay where you are, anchored by the shape of things and the quiet company of simple objects. The evening keeps its soft generosity, allowing room for wandering thoughts about later to float through and settle where they will, never demanding, always welcome to pass. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You move through the room the way someone moves through a familiar house, after guests have left, with small, respectful steps that make no claim on the place, only acknowledgement. The lamp by the couch throws a pool of warm light across the armrest and a stack of magazines, the way a slow hand lingers on paper. Outside the window, the city keeps an even, low breath, tail lights sliding like slow stitches, the occasional elevator breath from the next building. Inside, everything holds the same soft humility. A second mug cooling on the table, its ceramic rim still bearing the ghost of the last sip. A jacket draped over the back of a chair, as if its wearer might return at any gentle moment. The phone lies face down on the bookshelf, its screen dark, a small, cool rectangle among warmer textures. You can feel its presence in the way the light avoids it, in the subtle tilt of the wooden block beneath a vase. The silence that gathers around it is not blank or accusing. It is a kind of attention that neither demands nor dismisses, an empty cup beside other cups, acknowledged and quiet. It holds the day's unfinished things, like a cupped hand holds a handful of small stones, not asking you to sort them, only containing them so they do not spill. There are traces of company in the room that are not quite company anymore. A scarf folded and resting like a soft bookmark, a pair of well-worn house slippers tucked under the coffee table, a playlist paused mid-song on the speaker, with a title that means something private. Those traces are not explanations. They are the comfortable evidence of someone who once occupied an angle of light here, who left a shape in the cushions and a laugh in the pattern of a throw. They make the quiet feel inhabited, like a sofa warmed by bodies only recently absent. The apartment keeps them without commentary, letting presence and absence sit together on the same cushion. You notice small details the way people notice small kindnesses. The edge of a half-folded shirt, a pen left uncapped on the notebook, fingerprints on the window, where someone once rested a hand. The lamp's shade throws shadows that lean into each other. You do not look for an explanation of why those things matter. You feel their weight in the slow, private way of someone who has noticed the same line on a hand for years. There is no need for an answer tonight, in the way there is no need to rearrange the cups or rehang the jacket. The room is a patient witness. It keeps the things you might otherwise feel called to tidy or resolve. The quiet acts like a small room within the room, a contained space where thoughts and messages can exist without being acted upon. The unresponded to message sits inside that smaller room with the rest of the day's residue. Texts not replied to, sentences left unsaid in meetups and goodbyes, the way a face looks when you hold your tongue. You notice the tightness behind your breastbone as a texture, not a problem to be fixed. It presses like a soft book against the ribs, present but not demanding to be opened. The night gives it a place to rest. Your hands find the fabric of the throw, where someone else once smoothed it. Fingers trace the indentation without needing to explain why. The warmth of another person seems to have left a map in the fibers, where knees rested, the faint scent of their cologne mixed with laundry soap. This is not a story needing punctuation. The traces speak in fragments, a spoon, left with coffee grounds drying at the lip, a sticker at the corner of a paperback, a bus ticket folded in the coat pocket. You do not catalog them. You notice them and the noticing itself is quiet company. At the edge of the table, a coaster bears 3 faint rings from mugs. They mark time without labeling it. 2 nights ago, last week, that afternoon. The rings do not insist on meaning. They imply that there are rhythms here, that lives overlap without explanation. You sit and feel the weight of that overlapping as a soft, tolerable warmth. The city beyond the glass is a kind of distant rhythm too. The muffled thrum of late buses, an occasional laugh that carries and dissolves. None of it reaches a volume that needs correction. It is just texture. When you glance at the phone, there is no bright insistence, no urgent red badge. The darkness of the screen is a deliberate modesty. You hold a small array of possible responses in the mind, phrases you have used before, comfortable routes through conversation. But they sit like postcards, unopened in a drawer. You can imagine them, one after another, each a neat rectangle of handwriting. You also imagine leaving the drawer closed. The mental motion between the two is slow, like turning a page and then letting your hand rest on the book. Neither movement has to be declared right or wrong. The night makes room for both. Becoming aware of the way your body occupies the couch takes a long, patient time. The cushion shapes itself around you. Your shoulders ease into the angle formed by the pillows. The lamp's light warms the side of your face. Breathing is not counted or regulated. It is simply present. A small repeating map that the night follows without comment. The small, private ache of unanswered things loosens into an evenness. It does not evaporate. It becomes a presence that is held, not interrogated. You recognize that presence as one of the room's guests, a familiar person who has learned to wait politely in a corner with a cup of tea. There is a softness to this time that resists the hurried solutions of daylight. The problems that feel like puzzles by noon reduce themselves to shapes you can look at without needing a verdict. A message that demanded a rapid answer earlier in the day now appears as a sentence floating beyond the glass, small and almost pretty in its isolation. You do not dismiss it. You do not invent a reason for it. It sits, and you sit with it. Both of you contained by the hush of lamplight and the weight of a late-night playlist. Thoughts drift in and out of your awareness in a gentle, almost musical pattern. Details of an earlier conversation, the color of someone's nail polish, a phrase that landed softly in your chest and stayed put. The memory of a laugh curls like steam above a cup. You keep nothing pressed under a microscope. You allow the details to be uneven, to be as they are. The evening endorses no clarity. It offers instead a slow possibility that things might remain unfinished and still be tolerable, textured, human. You notice a minute of tenderness in the way your hand pats the cushion beside you before you stop. It is a small ceremonial gesture, not meant to summon anyone or anything. It is simply a recognition of shared space, a nod to the fact that other presences have some claim on this apartment's angles and light. The jacket on the chair leans into the room's warmth, like a resident, and you let it be. You do not rework the arrangement into a statement. It exists as evidence of ordinary living. The night attends to details the day overlooks. The faint sound of pipes contracting and releasing, the way the curtain's hem catches a stray breeze that slips between window and frame, the slow settling of the building into a steady, unremarkable rhythm. Each sound is like a footfall on a distant street, present, soft, and not intended to startle. You find your attention moving across them like one would move a hand over a piece of fabric, feeling for the weave. Here, in this contained quiet, there is no pressure to translate feeling into words or action. The room holds what is incomplete without nudging it toward completion. The silence is not empty, it is a vessel with depth. You sense the evening as a kind of patient hearth, warming the extras of the day into softer shapes. The unanswered message, the half-worn shirt, the quiet playlist, they are all items set gently around the room. They are permitted to remain unfinished, as if unfinished is a form of tenderness. You stay with that softness, the night wrapping itself into comfortable geometry around you. The city breathes, the lamp warms, and the phone rests in darkness. The quiet does not ask you to name, decide, or explain. It offers instead the slow recognition that some things can be allowed to wait, that presence does not always require reply, and that a room can hold those pauses with the same casual, unremarkable care it gives to plates cooling on the table. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. The room holds its light in a slow, patient way. The lamp by the armchair, offering a warm pool that lets the rest of the corners remain a little indistinct. Beyond the curtain, the city keeps its modest rhythms, cars like soft punctuation, a neighbor's window blinking with a late show. But inside, everything gathers around a different kind of quiet. You move without hurry, the rhythm of your hands matching the unpressured hush. There is a second mug on the counter, a thumbprint of steam gone cool, and the idea of that other presence lingers in the small shapes they left behind. A scarf folded over a chair back, a paperback open to a bookmarked page, a lighter resting against a coaster. None of it demands anything from you now. It simply is, like the lamp, like the slow breath you are aware of if you let yourself pay attention. The phone sits on the side table, face down, as if it too has taken a small, deliberate breath. The outline of it is familiar, rounded edges warmed a touch by the lamplight, a faint smudge where your thumb usually rests. You know there is a message you could attend to. There is always the pull to reach, to check, to form the small curving sentence that would settle a conversation for a while. Tonight, the phone stays quiet in its posture of not asking. The silence around it does not feel empty. It feels like space kept for you to choose from, slowly rather than be moved by immediacy. You notice that choice like noticing the way your sweater hangs from the hook, softly, without the pressure to act. There is a softness to the apartment's surfaces that matches the mood you have been inhabiting all evening. Cushions have the familiar indentations where you lean in certain ways. A throw is draped the way someone left it the other night, folded just so, as if expecting to be returned to. The kettle's scent has settled into a mild domestic, musk, tea leaves, and the faint starch of laundry. Nothing sharp, nothing needing explanation. You move through these small domestic proofs of life with a kind of careful, gentle curiosity. Your fingers brush the spine of a magazine that still has an article flagged with that bent corner you always make. It is a habitual tenderness, the way you treat things that are part of an ongoing conversation, not a momentary transaction. Outside, the night air has a coolness that surfaces as you glance at the window. The glass reflects a softened collage of interior light and distant street lamps. Shapes of buildings lean into each other like neighbors keeping company by proximity. You trace a slow line with your eyes across that reflected city, and find the edges soft, the hard lines eased by distance. There is comfort in how the night composes these softened outlines, the way the exterior seems to allow for a different kind of being, one that is less wrapped in the day's bright demands, and more in the hushed, private textures of presence. In that allowance, the message waiting on the phone feels less like a summons, and more like one strand in a wider net of connection. Time does something unusual at night. It thickens and becomes more tactile. Minutes become moments that you can hold and set aside. You realize you are not moving to resolve anything tonight. You are allowing remainder to remain, unsettled perhaps, but not urgent. The thought of replying later sits lightly somewhere behind your ribs. It is a possibility you can visit tomorrow or the day after without pressure. The fact of it being unanswered does not fray the bonds that are quiet and honest. The presence of other people, of friends seen and voices heard earlier, remains intact in the shapes of objects around you. A mug that held two hands' warmth, a chair that still remembers the weight of someone leaning in beside you. These things keep memory as a kind of ambient company. On the shelf, small things form a modest constellation. A postcard from a weekend trip, a pair of sunglasses carelessly propped, a photograph tucked into the corner of a frame. The photograph is a smudge of light and faces, cropped in a way that preserves intimacy rather than explanation. You can feel the echo of conversation from that afternoon or that evening, the way laughter sat between sentences and left polite traces on the air. There is no requirement to render the moment intelligible again. Keeping it as a soft, remembered presence is enough. You press your palm to the fabric of the sofa and sense the familiar give, the tiny fibers shifting against your skin. Touch here is not about urgency. It is about recognition, the gentle acknowledgement that these things and people were part of the day and are allowed to remain part of the night. You think about the message without turning it into a knot. The mind carries the content as it carries the rest of the day's impressions. A low that you can attend to or let fall away. There are no sharp edges to it at the moment, no ticking demand for immediate response. You breathe into the quiet and notice how your shoulders, which had been carrying a certain tautness, release a measure of tension. This slackening is not a solving. It is a leaning, slow, and deliberate into the ambience of the room. It allows the thought of connection to sit alongside the thought of solitude, with neither dominating. Both are present, held without needing to be fixed. There is a small ritual to your movement. You refill the mug, run water, rinse, set the cup back on the table. The sound of liquid against ceramic is a small, private percussion in the hush. You do not hurry. You take the time to tune the gesture until it feels complete in itself. The phone remains face down. You think of the message as a light passing through glass, visible but not pressing. The choice not to answer right now is not a denial. It is a practice in allowing things to exist without immediate closure. You notice how that feels in your chest. Not hollow, not anxious, simply spacious. A sweater pulled over the arm of a chair carries the faint perfume of someone else's detergent, a lived-in scent that is part memory and part continuing presence. There is intimacy in these ordinary traces that does not need naming. They are the texture of chosen family life, the small, consistent overlap of daily practice and shared space. They hold you in a way that is steady and unflashy, like the low exhale of a room settling down. You find yourself listening for the small sounds you might have once overlooked. The refrigerator's soft hum, the distant murmur of city life, the settling creak of floorboards cooling. All these sounds form a low tapestry that makes silence feel inhabited rather than empty. You consider the possibility that someone will send another message, that the digital conversation could pick up where it left off at any time. There is a kind of ease in accepting that possibility while also keeping this moment intact. The night stretches like a hand offered, not demanding, inviting you to rest within your own finite attention. You can imagine the incoming light of the screen later, the flicker and the choice to respond, to type slowly, to let words find their shape without haste. For now, the phone's dark surface is a small, flat moon on the table, reflecting a lamp and the curve of your shoulder. It is part of the room's panorama, present but not commanding. You notice that being together with the fact of other people, without the requirement to reply immediately, feels like a form of trust. It is a quiet trust that relationships can hold absence and return, that small gaps do not mean fracture. The apartment's objects bear witness to this, plentiful and ordinary proofs that life and friendship are made up of repeated, small gestures rather than single performances. You sink back into the sofa and allow the space to do its work, to cradle what is present and allow everything else to ease. The night keeps its slow, generous rhythm. You are in it, neither required to fix anything nor expected to explain. The message can wait. The city continues its soft composition outside the glass. Inside, you rest with what is gentle and enough. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You sit in the middle of the evening like a body that has been kneaded gently and set down. Breath long and room warm. The lamp at the corner of the couch casts a soft pool of light that makes the fabric of the throw look like something well tended, like a companion's hand flattened and left to rest. Beyond the window, the city keeps its patient rhythm. A distant neon pulse, a car that takes a long time to move past. The thin, steady sigh of some building system letting out air. Inside, everything is arranged in the ways that mean you live here. A second mug sits on the kitchen counter, the ring of a forgotten lip drawing into the ceramic, and a pair of socks folded over the back of a chair, as if waiting for the next moment they will be needed. On the coffee table, your phone is face up, but dim, part of the stillness. You are aware of it, as you would be aware of someone in the room who has decided to be quiet. There is a lightness to that awareness, a kind of private distance, informal, practiced. The thought of a message flickers in the same gentle way as a memory, present but not insistent. It exists without pressure, like a book on the shelf, whose title you recognize, and have chosen to leave closed for now. You move slowly, not as a renovation of energy, but as an honoring of the present pace. Your hand brushes the edge of the mug and feels the cool margin where the ceramic met the heat earlier. The sensation is mundane and precise. A little moisture, the faint grit awash left behind, the residual warmth on the bottom. These small details hold you in the room. They are the geometry of the night, edges, balances, the small stabilizing things you do without thinking when you settle into being at home. There is a companionable anonymity to the light. It is warm enough to keep the hands comfortable, and the window glass keeps the city softened into shapes. Rectangles of other people's rooms, sliding down into the darker stretch of the street. A curtain moves imperceptibly as a breeze presses at it from outside, and you notice the rhythm, but do not follow it into thought. Your breathing matches the room's cadence more than the city's. The body remembers being steady in places like this. The memory gestures towards stillness, and you accept it, without explanation. The idea of answering the message is there as an image more than as a command. It sits like a folded shirt on a chair, present in the space, part of the domestic scene, but not demanding the act of being smoothed or worn. You think about how many nights have been spent opening and closing the phone, letting conversation slip into the spaces between things, and how sometimes the act of not answering is an arrangement of your time as much as any reply. It is an aesthetic choice of rest, not a refusal or a retreat. The fact of it is quiet and ordinary. Not everything in a day needs resolution before you settle. You allow the possibility of uncertainty to live in the room without feeling it as unfinished business. Here, uncertainty is soft, like the edges of a shadow where a lamp meets the dark. There is no sharpness, no need to pin it down. The night accepts things that are unresolved. The walls hum that acceptance. Your hands fold together in your lap, and the weight of them is reassuring. You recall the small domestic gestures of the evening, moving dishes into a neat stack, leaving the bedroom door ajar so the hallway light could find its way in, flinging a jacket over the chair in the place where you always drop it when you come in. These habitual things are like a language you share with yourself and with the people whose shapes live in your memory. Queer presence in this room is not an announcement. It is in the way objects speak to each other. A cookbook with notes pressed between pages. A postcard folded into the back of a journal. A pair of shoes that know the mark of a favorite walk. These things map out a life that is chosen and tended, not proclaimed. There is an intimacy to the arrangement of things that is unshowy, mature, steady. It is privacy as care, domestic familiarity as sanctuary. The idea of someone seeing into this space feels unnecessary because the richness of it is felt here in the hush. Outside, life continues with gentle indifference. You can hear a laugh far off that collapses into the night, a bicycle bell that announces a direction, the soft collective exhale of a city moving through its own hours. These sounds do not tug you, they hover at the edges of perception, part of the room's boundary. Inside, the air carries the faint scent of the day's laundry, clean cotton folded and waiting for morning, and the subtle trace of whatever meal you prepared earlier, nothing loud enough to claim attention, but present like a familiar chord. At some point, you let a thought arrive about what a reply might look like. A measured sentence, a little truth, a small slack of time given back to someone else. The image comes and lingers, but deciding on it is unnecessary now. There is a gentleness in postponement. This is not avoidance as much as a recognition that your energy tonight is calibrated differently. You are choosing a pace that allows things to be and unwinds the urgency from them. The night accommodates that choice without comment. You notice the textures under your fingers, the weave of the cushion, the cold edge of a lamp base, the slightly worn binding of a book you sometimes open to the same passage. These anchors that keep your attention from getting caught up in the small storms a day can leave behind. They do not fix anything. They simply make the present tolerable and, in its own way, pleasant. The room's geometry, the placement of objects, the way light falls across surfaces, all combine into an atmosphere that is at once private and gently inclusive. It is the kind of space where belonging is not declared, but is simply assumed by the manner of the light and the habit of objects. You think briefly of the people connected to that message, not by names or backstories, but by the trace they leave in your life. A laugh, a tone of voice, a way of pausing before saying something that matters. These traces are held here without being pressed for immediate response. There is trust in that holding, a recognition that connections can wait in the room with you without becoming urgent. The responsibility to respond will greet you in the measure of your waking hours. Until then, the message is an object sitting quietly on the table. In this pause, you find a softness to your attention. It is not empty or aloof, just unhurried. Your pulse slows and the edges of the day become less distinct. The evening stretches like a piece of fabric smoothed out and allowed to rest. You do not need to explain why you are choosing to be still. Explanation would be a different kind of energy. The room holds you as you are, containing not only the light and the objects, but the possibility of not moving toward anything. When the thought returns, inevitable, gentle, you let it pass through the hush. It feels like listening to an instrument that is not being played, recognizing the notes available without reaching for them. You sit with the sensation of unmade decisions and unhurried time, and the space between thought and action opens up into something restful. In that space, anticipation does not sharpen, it mellows. The night does not press for answers, it simply keeps the company of you and the small city-lit room, both of you continuing in your quiet ways, together but not entangled, content to let the unanswered message be itself for a while longer. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. The lamp by the couch makes a small pool of warm light that keeps the rest of the room comfortably dim. Beyond the glass, the city is a quiet wash of shapes and distant color. You can tell by the way the light softens on the curtains that someone else's window is open, somewhere across the street. A narrow ribbon of cooler blue, cutting through the deeper darkness. Inside, the apartment settles into familiar arrangements. A pair of mugs on the low table, one with a faint ring of tea sediment, and the other rinsed and left to dry on the saucer. A jacket tossed over the back of a chair like a casual punctuation. A stack of books with a single bookmark, peeking out where a page was left to be picked up again, whenever. Your phone lies face down a short reach away, its black rectangle unilluminated. You can imagine the glow it would give if it were flipped, the sudden flaring of conversation into the room. But for now, it rests like any other object. The surface of the table is cool under your palm, and as your hand settles there, the contact asks for no decision, no response, no explanation. The apartment smells faintly of soap and the warm paper of the books stacked near the lamp, with a trace of whatever you warmed for dinner still threading the air. Nothing insistently aromatic, just the comfortable residue of a day lived here. You notice the rhythm of the building in the background, an elevator sigh, the soft shift of heat somewhere in the pipes, a neighbor padding down the hall, without the weight of whatever day they carried. Those sounds come and go, and arrange themselves into a kind of nighttime punctuation that is neither intrusive nor entirely absent. Windows across the street reflect a few motions, a hand stretching, a lamp turning, and in that reflected movement, there is the sense of motion beyond your immediate orbit. It does not require action from you. It is simply there, another instance of life that continues on its own terms. The second mug on the table speaks of company earlier, a presence that sat and left traces without wanting anything in return. You recognize the way the cushions, remembering the shape of another body, retain it like a soft map. These small residues of being together, the jacket over the chair, a scarf folded on the arm of the couch, a stray sock caught under the bookshelf, make the room feel less like a stage and more like an intimate geography. There is a comfort in this, not a tidy conclusion, but a shared interiority, evidence of belonging that does not ask to be named. It is enough to see the place as a container of undone things and quieted exchanges, the kind that leave behind warmth rather than demand. Your breathing eases. There is no instruction here, only observation. The inhale comes and goes with a gentle steadiness, deeper at times, shallower at others, and you do not have to measure it. The chest expands and settles in a manner so familiar, it feels negligible, like the way a chair holds its shape when you sink into it. Breathing even out without effort is not a goal accomplished. It is simply the natural settling to the weight of the night. Your attention, which earlier may have been jagged and active, begins to loosen its grip on timelines and outcomes. Messages unread are not empty obligations, but small, folded events, tucked to the side of the evening, like a postcard placed into a drawer for another day. There is a particular softness to how time behaves now. Minutes do not rush, they unspool, revealing small textures. A faint breeze moves through the slightly open window and touches the edge of the curtains, making them breathe in their own slow way. The coolness of the night finds small paths across the back of your neck, along the exposed forearm, and the contrast to the lamp's glow keeps the room from becoming one-toned. Light and temperature negotiating with one another is a gentle conversation, and you feel held in the middle of it. The apartment is a private map, whose lines are drawn by the objects you have let remain where they were left. Thoughts, too, rearrange. What earlier may have felt important, a possible answer, a decision pending, now softens into possibility rather than pressure. You can imagine the series of replies you might make, different inflections and tones, and yet none of them insist on being created right now. That same unlit phone is simply another object in the room, a small rectangle that could, in another hour or tomorrow, ask for engagement. For the moment, it is content to sit out the quiet. The not knowing of what will be said or how it will be received loses its sharp edges. It becomes a background pattern, as unobtrusive as the hum of the refrigerator. There are small domestic gestures that speak of care without being performative. A sweater folded neatly on the armchair, the exact way a tea towel was smoothed and left on the counter. A tangle of keys that always seems to gather in the same place by the door. These gestures build a sense of domestic familiarity that feels like chosen architecture. The way you and whoever shares this rhythm have learned to leave space for one another's habits. There is privacy, as safety here, not in the sense of a fortress, but in the sense of an agreed softness, a tacit understanding that some things can remain unfinished and still be okay. The light from the lamp picks out the grain in the wooden table, the small scratches that tell of objects carried across it over weeks and months. Those marks are not flaws to be fixed, but records of use, of living. You move your fingers along the rim of the mug and feel the tactile boundary between warmth and coolness. The mugs, the jacket, the books. They are not statements, merely evidence that this is a space where bodies and moments have occupied the same rooms and left each other traces. There is no need to tidy these traces tonight. The mess is not failing. It is presence. Outside, the city makes its distant arrangements. A dog barks far away and is answered by something you can't see. A siren glides along an avenue and dissolves. A bar on the corner plays a low melody that hums through its open door. None of these are emergencies. They are part of the fabric of night that does not demand reaction. Their soft insistence is a reminder that life outside continues, that visibility and connection did not evaporate, because you have chosen to rest. The world contains many overlapping rhythms, some quick, some slow, and yours can be whatever pace feels bearable. Attention drifts now in a gentle, unpressured way. It slides from the potential of conversations not yet had to the small sensory details of the room. The way the lamplight pools, the coolness under your hand, the quiet architecture of cushions. Your mind allows itself to linger on the discrete pleasures of the here and now. There is no pressure to produce meaning, only an openness to notice. This noticing is quietly queer in its domesticity. The intimacy of small shared objects, the acceptance of unfinishedness, the permission to hold presence without having to perform it. The night is generous in its neutrality. It does not require explanation, and nothing in the apartment pushes you toward an immediate conclusion. Everything waits in its ordinary way. The jacket, the mug, the stack of books, patient without insistence. The unlit phone keeps its silence. Your attention slides over outcomes like water over a stone, not stopping long enough to be caught by them. In the space between one inhale and the next, there is a kind of permission that does not need to be named. It simply is. A room that holds you and the traces of others. A city that hums along outside. A night that asks nothing but to be noticed. The lamp by the armchair throws a small pool of amber across the rug, and you find that the room holds a particular quality of time at this hour. It is not the eager time of beginnings or the sharp time of decisions. It is a gentler, pliant time that lets things be for a while. On the coffee table, the phone lies face down. You know that there is a light under the glass, a little unredness paused within it. But in the soft circle of the lamp, it is merely another object, matte and familiar. The surface of the table bears rings where mugs have rested before. One ring is faint, the other darker, a ghost of someone's presence that left and then left again in a different way. Those rings look almost like little maps, cartography of a night already lived. Your fingertips brush the edge of the couch's arm, feeling the fabric give and catch in a way that has become recognition. There is a folded blanket draped over the back, slightly askew where someone once tucked it around their knees. A jacket hangs over the chair, the collar softened from wear, the sleeve still slightly warm, where it brushed against another body earlier in the evening. You do not catalog these things for argument or proof. You simply notice them. Like listening to a familiar song you do not need to name. They carry no demand. They carry only the quiet evidence of company and of ongoing lives that have braided for a little while, and then eased apart for the night. Outside, the city breathes in that wide, slow way it does. A distant murmur that slides through window sills and warms the sill. Streetlights throw thin halos on the opposite building's brick, and sometimes a silhouette crosses a far window. A brief cadence you do not need to interpret. The radiator makes its patient metallic sigh. an old instrument keeping steady time, and you place your palm over it and feel the gentle pull of heat moving through cast iron. It is an ordinary comfort. Ordinary comforts are allowed this late. The unanswered message sits in the soft background of your attention, like a note held between pages. You can picture its edges, the color of its bubble, the rhythm of a keyboard, pause mid-thought. Something about it resists tidy closure. It is not an absence that presses like a need, but an openness that lingers, like the space left at the edge of a chair when someone stands to make tea. You attend to it with a kind of slow curiosity. What tone would the reply take? What level of effort would it require? But your awareness is gentle. You do not lean forward as if to resolve it immediately. You allow the hesitation to have its own texture. In the kitchen, a small stack of dishes waits, stacked not anywhere perfect, but in a place of convenience. A bowl nested within another, a spoon drying beside them. You used to think of dishes as chores that demanded repayment, but tonight they look like quiet witnesses. The faucet at the sink has a faint smear of water, left over from rinsing, tiny silver threads that catch the lamp's glow. A tea tin with an unmoved scoop sits like a tiny island in the countertop's expanse. The scent of something citrus from earlier lingers, not strong enough to direct your steps, but enough to arrange itself in the room's memory. The air has that particular cross of cool and carried warmth. Cool where the window stands open, a hair. Warm where the lamp keeps a corner lit. The curtains move only a little, a slow, careful gesture that suggests the night is being observed rather than interrupted. You notice how your breath sounds in this small bar of light, a soft rhythm that seems to harmonize with the faint hum of the refrigerator. Those sounds are not lonely. They are company of a different sort. Low-frequency presences that keep the space from feeling like a void. There is a postcard tucked beneath a stack of books on the shelf, an image of someplace brighter and further away, edges slightly bent from hands that held it. A pair of keys on the hallway table glints under the lamp's sheen. One key with a tiny charm you recognize and smile at without moving. Near the window, a plant reaches its leaves toward the light, patient and unadorned. You trace the line of a leaf with your eyes and feel some small satisfaction in the curve, as if seeing it continue to grow is an uncomplicated reassurance. You think about the evening that came before this quiet. There were conversations that folded themselves into pauses, the exchange of familiar jokes that landed softer than during daylight, the kind of gladness that does not demand to be loud. There were silences that were companionable and silences that held questions without forcing them into answers. Those echoes are still present in the upholstery and the smell of the room. They are not hauled out and displayed. They sit inside things, faint like small stones at the bottom of a jar. At the edge of your sight, the second mug waits on the tray, its inside bronze with the residue of warmth. It is half empty in the literal sense and full in another. That quiet presence suggests someone was here, and also that they are not required to still be. The mug is a sign of a shared circuit, an ordinary transmission of being seen and then not without drama. The cup's handle is worn in a particular place where a thumb often sits. You imagine that thumb and the way it adjusted the cup for comfort. There is a tenderness in thinking of those details, a slow kindness toward bodies that spend evenings in rooms shaped by other people's habits. There is a small pile of notes on the kitchen counter, edges overlapping like small hands. One is a scrawl of a time and a place. Another is a fragment of a grocery list. None of them demand action from you at this moment. They are gentle reminders that life continues, that arrangement exists beyond this hour. You can fold the notes back into their place and let them be as they are, minor coordinates of a life that will resume its movement in the morning. For now, they are part of the room's lexicon of unfinished sentences. When you sit back and let the hush settle in, You feel the stillness not as a closing, but as a kind of generous suspension. It presses softly against the edges of thought, smoothing its creases and allowing stray threads to loosen without snapping. The pressure of expectation, which is sometimes present during the day, has slackened into something more akin to waiting. And the waiting is neither anxious nor particularly intentional. It is like resting your hand on the back of a chair. There, present, not gripping. Your thoughts drift to the shape of the unanswered message again, and you offer it a little attention as though acknowledging a person across the room. There is no need to decide anything now. The message can inhabit the space alongside you, neither demanding nor disappearing. It exists in the same quiet register as the jacket on the chair and the plant reaching for light. The room holds it with a kind of patient civility. You notice small personal rituals. The way you turn a page when reading in this light, the slight adjustment of cushions to find the right curve for your back, the habitually soft way you set a coaster down. These are tiny inheritances of living here, familiar movements that carry no urgency. They are the architecture of evening. They build a room that is both private and hospitable, the sort of space where it feels possible to let messages rest in their own time. A blue-black hush sits beyond the window. The city's pulse continues in a softened key, a distant echo that makes the room feel like a kept secret. The night keeps both the known and the unspoken, and you notice how that balance resembles the shape of certain relationships held in proximity, not coerced into disclosure. It is a domestic geometry that allows for complexity without flattening it into action. There is a particular ease in the way the room contains this incompleteness. It does not ask for resolution. It simply adapts, folding a lack into its ordinary furniture. The lamp keeps burning in its corner. The radiator breathes. The phone rests. The mugs cool by degrees. Your body aligns to the room's tempo. In that alignment, there is a soft permission to remain open-ended. Not because something needs to be postponed, but because postponement itself is a kind of room you can live in for a while. The night stretches on in patient increments, and you let yourself be part of the slow unfolding without pushing it toward any final note. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. The room keeps its own slow breath. A lamp on the low shelf throws a warm oval onto the rug, an unhurried light that lets edges blur rather than sharpen. Outside, the city moves in the soft voice of distant tires and the occasional lift and fall of someone's laughter, carried far enough to be only an idea. You notice how the air from the window is cool when it brushes your forearm, a thin, patient thing that reminds you of the difference between presence and pressure. A phone sits face down on the table, its glass unlit, the surface gathering the fingerprints of the day without making a sound about them. It is one object among many, two mugs cooling beside each other, one with a faint ring of tea, the other forgotten in the rhythm of earlier conversation. A scarf is draped over the back of a chair, folded the way someone who will return might fold it. A jacket hangs by the door, a sleeve still warm from being worn. These are small signatures of company, the evidence of having been seen and having seen, and they carry no demand. They simply exist. Time here does not rush to resolve, rush to anything. Moments unfurl like pages you can turn back to if you like, or let sit. The edges soft with the night's humidity. You move slowly, or perhaps remain entirely still, and the room accommodates that pace. There is a kind of permission in the way the light stays steady, in the way the cushions keep their shape around where you were sitting, as if the world understands that not every thread needs pulling tonight. You find yourself attentive to small textures. The fabric of the sofa is cool beneath your palm, slightly raised where your hand rests. The weave catches the lamp's glow and turns it into a gentle geometry of light and shadow. The pages of a book on the coffee table are slightly fanned, the place where someone last left off marked by a pressed receipt and a paperclip. You trace none of these marks with urgency. The arc of attention is leisurely, curious without the sense that it must reach a conclusion. Sounds arrive as if from apart. A building's pipes sigh, a neighbor's window opens and closes, and an elevator announces itself with a soft mechanical clearing. None of it requires an immediate reaction from you. These noises are companions rather than interruptions. The city beyond the glass is patient, offering a background against which your thoughts are allowed to wander without becoming demands. There is a small list of things you might think to say to yourself, unspoken lines that rise and then recede. You notice the impulse to check the dark rectangle on the table, to see whether the screen will bloom with color and names. The impulse is present in the way your hand hovers over the edge of the table, in the subtle lean forward of your shoulders. And then you feel the slight absurdity of needing to decide anything at all right now. The message, when imagined, occupies a space that feels oddly weightless, less like a knot to untie and more like a paperweight sitting on the sill, holding nothing in place but its own quiet. There is comfort in the way small household traces suggest continuity rather than expectation. A second mug speaks of shared ritual more than obligation. A folded towel on the back of a chair carries warmth from an earlier minute and the memory of someone's hands. You can read an entire evening in these remnants if you tire of reading elsewhere. They say that people were here, that something happened, that everything is not only you and an unanswered signal, but a curve of ordinary, slow interactions that refuse to be urgent. Sometimes you let your attention turn to the view. Street lamps pooling in low puddles, apartment windows like tiny paintings with their own chosen compositions of light. On a near balcony, a plant leans toward the hush, leaves faintly silvered in the lamp's spill. There is a neighbor's bicycle locked to a post, its silhouette softened by distance. Looking outward like this feels like a small pilgrimage, acknowledgement of a world that keeps moving, one whose pace you can match or decline as you like. Your thoughts drift through the room the way they drift through time here. Not in a straight line, but in an exploration of the things that require no explanation. You remember the cadence of voices from earlier, kind, overlapping, the way a laugh can cushion a sentence, and the memory comes without weighing you down. It arrives like the scent of detergent in the air, familiar and clean, a trace that comforts without commanding release. There is no tidy resolution in these memories, only a soft accumulation that makes the apartment feel lived in and kind to the staying. There is a particular quiet joy in the small domestic details that signal belonging. A pair of well-worn slippers tucked beneath the couch, a coaster with a small ring where a cup once sat, a lamp cord braided once in a distracted way and left to be. Each item holds a history that does not insist on being retold. It is enough that they exist, having been handled, placed, left, returned. This is the texture of chosen space, vessels of common moments, the muted evidence of being held without performance. At the center of the room, time smiles without impatience. You can move through it or rest inside it. The idea of responding to anything beyond these walls feels optional in the most literal sense. There is room to simply be with the weight of a single evening. You might fold the scarf, pick up the cup, turn the page of the book, or you might watch the light alter across the wall as night deepens. No action here is a verdict. Your breathing matches the room's metronome, slow, uninsistent, deliberate in the way a house settles. Muscles release in small, patient waves. There is a calming precision to the hush, like someone dimming multiple lamps at once until only a halo remains. It's not an erasure, only a softening, an allowance for the edges of things to blur into a more forgiving outline. You notice feelings that usually come with unanswered things, a tiny loop of wondering, the way curiosity and tiredness can twine, Rather than trying to dissolve that loop, you let it rest beside you, a small object placed on a table rather than hidden in a pocket. It is permissible to observe it without obliging it to change. You can hum a few notes under your breath, align a cup in a line with the edge of the tray, straighten a magazine so its spine faces outward. These are small acts of attention that do not demand transformation. The room holds an unspoken kindness in its light, and whatever remnants of company remain. There is no need to narrate the evening into endings or decisions. You feel the satisfaction of minor continuities, the way a lamp will be there tomorrow, the way the jacket by the door will be found where it was left. Even the idea of messages waiting seems less like a precipice, and more like part of an ongoing landscape, one small hill among many. Time stretches, curious and indifferent to your need for answers. It is not rushing to a solution, it is simply abiding. The moment remains intact as it is, a confluence of soft light, familiar objects, distant city sounds, and the unlit phone that holds its own quiet. You move within these elements like someone walking slowly through a room they have known for a long time, noting the details without feeling compelled to rearrange them. There is room here for the unfinished. Unfinished sentences hang like gentle ellipses in the air, not incomplete so much as in a patient pause. You allow them to be pauses, nothing more. You allow the night to be the night, filled with its small, ordinary things and the steady hum of living that needs no punctuation. The apartment keeps its evenness, and so do you, held by the unassuming steadiness of objects and sounds that simply are, without hurry, without insistence, without need for immediate response. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You notice first that thinking eases without any announcement. There's a soft hand at the edge of thought, lifting weight from words and setting them down, like a sweater folded on a chair. The room keeps its ordinary order. A lamp still warm from earlier, 2 mugs on the counter, one rimmed with a faint ring of dried tea, a scarf caught on the back of a chair. These objects do not demand explanation. They are simply present, companions in the low light, and you let your mind unlace itself around them. The light here is soft and particular. It blooms from a single lamp on the shelf and pools across pages of a book you haven't opened tonight. It touches the creases in the couch cushion where you rested your hip this afternoon, follows the line of a jacket thrown over the armrest, and settles into the shallow valleys of a folded sweater. Beyond the window, the city keeps a quiet, distant patience, a ribbon of sodium light, a neon sign that has dwindled to a gentle hum, windows across the alley that leak thin squares of warmth. The glass separates you from that low, ongoing life, but it also holds the night around you like a familiar blanket. You become aware of the difference between what your eyes can name and what your body already knows. The body notices small, steady things first. Your shoulders ease their slope, as if someone has unlaced a pair of hands from around them. The pulse in your wrist becomes a soft metronome that you do not count. It simply keeps time. The soles of your feet press into the rug, the coarse weave offering a tiny resistance that your toes remember, like the shape of a room. You pay attention to the breath, not as a thing to change, but as the quiet architecture of your evening. Slow in, slow out, a rhythm that lines up with the lamp's glow and the distant hush of tires on wet pavement. These are sensations that do not need to be translated into sentences. They arrive as color and texture. There is a kind of privacy in the way the apartment holds memories without naming them. A postcard from a friend leans against a stack of bills, its edges softened from being handled, its ink smudged where rain once brushed it. The postcard is small and ordinary, but the gesture it represents hums quietly under your skin. A second mug tells of company, even if that company is a person who lives in another neighborhood now, or who stopped by earlier with laughter folded into their pockets. The evidence of care is domestic. A towel left on the radiator, a cork on the counter, a playlist that still murmurs the name of a shared song when you press pause and let the room carry the silence between notes. You notice too how the phone lies dark on the table, face down as if sleeping. Its silence is not an accusation. It is an invitation to remain unresponsive if that is what tonight asks for. The battery gauge is a small domestic fact, enough for tomorrow if tomorrow needs it. The notification light that once blinked urgent now sits unlit, like a star behind cloud. You feel the option to not answer as a gentle weather. It could rain, it could clear, and either way you remain inside where the light is warm. Your hands know this choice not as a debate, but as a place to rest. Sound in this apartment is minimal and generous. Pipes sigh and settle in their old human ways. A neighboring window leaves a soft, rhythmic voice of someone putting away dishes. Far off, a late train slides like a seam across the city. Inside, the furniture exhales. The couch remembers the shape of your favor, the firmness of the place you always choose. When you move, the cushions answer with the accustomed little murmur. The same creak the floor has made since you moved in. The same squeal the chair offers when you sit at the table. These sounds are plain and domestic, each one carrying nothing more than the fact of being alive in a building with other lives. Textures navigate you through the room. The sweater on your lap is a familiar map. The pilled sections along the hem. The cool line where the fabric caught the last of the day's air. You run a thumb along its seam, and the thread drags a kind of memory up into your palm. An evening on a balcony, someone else's laugh, the taste of something shared. The lamp's light makes the fabric seem to glow from within, and you feel how the weight of the sweater anchors you in the present in a way your thoughts cannot. Your fingertips press into the armrest, testing the give of upholstery, the faint warmth from where you rested an elbow earlier. Each tiny pressure is a language without words. The air carries a neutral, careful scent. Clean laundry, a hint of lemon from the sink cleaner, the faint echo of perfume left on a scarf. Nothing in the apartment is sharp. Even the ordinary odors are softened by night. They settle like dust motes in the lamp's glow. When you inhale, the air feels like a slow-moving tide carrying what remains of the day out and letting something quieter slide in. You notice how the coolness at the window edge pulls at the skin behind your knees, and how the warmth from the lamp rests across the tops of your hands. These contrasts are small consolations. Cool where you want rest, warm where you want to be held. Your attention shifts without deciding. Thoughts used to be active objects. Questions, expectations, the list of things you might have said differently. Now they thin out and become textures, like threads in a sweater. You no longer plan to reknit. They are present but not pressing. They unspool and curl into the background. Sensations arrive in their place. The slight weight of your eyelids, the slow ache in the base of your neck that comes from carrying more than you meant to that day. The gentle hunger that is content to wait. You let those sensations be as they are, not as problems to solve. Time here feels pliable. Minutes do not march. They slow and puddle in corners. You notice the way a minute stretches when your hand lingers on a book's spine, the way another evaporates when you shift the lamp's angle and watch the light travel across the room. There is a softness to each interval. It allows you to rest without needing to explain why you are staying still. The night keeps its own slow schedule, and the apartment fits inside it like a pocket. There is a queer kind of intimacy to the domestic traces in the room, small, private signals of life shared and life kept, and they make the night feel less solitary. A well-worn mug knows hands. A folded shirt remembers a body. You are not asked to narrate those connections. They exist as facts. There once was touch. There were conversations left mid-sentence. There were moments of ease. Those facts sit near the lamp, like low furniture. They are not demands, only parts of the room's architecture, and you move among them with the unhurried care of someone cataloging a familiar map. As the night deepens, the body settles further into the contours of the couch. Your weight is met by fabric and foam and the quiet geometry of the cushions. You notice the slackening of small tensions. The jaw unclenches its habitual hold on the day. The forehead releases its thin, persistent worry. These movements are not decisions so much as natural adjustments, tiny domestic acts that keep you steady. They are unremarked and precise. You remain present to the small theater of light and shadow that plays across the room. Curtains breathe as the window accepts the city's exhale. A neighbor's muted laughter fades into the distance like a scene you glimpsed and did not need to interpret. Your phone stays face down, the dark screen reflecting the lamp in a soft, private way. There is no requirement to respond, no urgency leaning over your shoulder. In this room, with the quiet arranged around you, sensation replaces thought, not with emptiness, but with an intimate, patient fullness. You let it be. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You are in the part of night where edges feel softer, and everything that seemed sharp earlier has had time to settle into a generous patience. The lamp by the couch throws a warm circle across the rug, and the rest of the room exists as a gentle gradient away from it. The city beyond the window is a slow rhythm now, a rhythm that isn't requesting anything from you. The glass cools to the touch where your palm rests against the sill. Outside, headlights pass like the steady blinking of a distant thought, and the air from an open window brings a breath of night that smells faintly of wet pavement and something clipped and clean, laundry maybe, or the trace of a coat that was worn earlier. There is a second mug on the coffee table, the handle nicked in a small, familiar way, as if someone else's laugh left its mark. It sits slightly askew from your own, a quiet evidence of evening shared sometime earlier, or perhaps of an intention to share that was never urgent enough to be acted on. The mug is still warm, not hot, the warmth of something that had been set down and left to keep its thoughts to itself. A sweater is folded over the chair back, not folded enough for display, but in the kind of careful imperfection that lives in chosen homes. Soft at the sleeves, a faint scent of someone who has been here, real and uncomplicated. A pair of shoes rests near the door, toes pointing outward like a small, contented animal. The apartment carries the textures of people who live together in a private way. A small stack of dishes humming quietly in the sink. A couple of books splayed open on the table, as if they took a breath and decided to rest mid-sentence. A jacket thrown over a lamp, the way a person will drape something when they don't want to make a show of tidiness, but still want their things in reach. You feel the phone pressed face down on the bookshelf, where it read earlier. A black mirror and a nest of other things. Earbuds coiled like a loose promise. A postcard with handwriting that curls at the edges. A ticket stub from a film you went to with someone who keeps returning as a calm memory rather than an ache. The screen being dark is its own kind of permission. It hums with potential and with the absence of demand. There is a message waiting, or perhaps there had been several, and the urge to answer sits like a small animal, alert, interested, but no longer insistent. You can notice the way your breathing shifts when you glance toward the table, and then look away, as if deciding not to look is a choice made softly rather than by force. There is a hush in the room that feels almost companionable. The radiator exhales in the corner with a single, slow sigh. Above, the curtains move a fraction, responding to a breeze you can't see but can feel on the back of your neck. Somewhere farther down the hall, another apartment makes a faint domestic sound. Pages turn to the clink of a glass, reminding you that life is continuing in parallel, that the world outside your lamp is quietly occupied without being urgent. This is a night that allows for the possibility of not answering, for not filling the empty space with words, just because they could be offered. There is a kind of luxury in that indolence, the way a room can collect small, private relics and not demand their arrangement. Your hands find the fabric of the blanket over the arm of the chair. The material is cool where your fingers press, then slowly warms with the gentle heat of being touched. You feel the subtle shape of the couch against your legs, the imprint of nights spent reading or sitting with someone who knew how to occupy silence without measuring it. There is an intimacy in ordinary objects, the indentation in the cushion where a beloved sits, the shadow on the bookshelf from a frame turned away, the coffee ring on the table that will be there tomorrow and the next day because someone was here and then left the ring without fuss. These are the domestic signposts of chosen closeness. They do not announce themselves loudly, but they map a small, private landscape where you can rest without explanation. The anticipation you carried earlier, the mild electric tension of messages, the slight flutter when the phone lights up, has become less of a pointer and more of a texture. It is a soft hum under everything else, like distant traffic rather than a siren. You notice how your attention can move away from it and then back, neither scolding nor urging, simply observing. The desire to respond has not vanished. It has changed shape, smaller, more companionable, the way a cat might decide whether to curl into your lap. There is a permission here that does not wear loud signage. It sits like a soft lamp, quietly available if you decide to reach for it, otherwise content to be part of the room's low light. You let your thoughts wander, without trying to arrange them into sentences. They drift like the veils of the curtains, sometimes catching on the bracket of a memory, sometimes lifting away. There is enough in this apartment to remind you that love and care do not have to be performed. They exist in the small things you leave behind. A half-folded letter on the table is not unfinished business, but a soft artifact of a life inclined toward sharing. A coaster sits where a glass once rested, ring drying slowly into the grain of the wood. The lamp overhead flickers for a second, not a failure, but a tiny breathing of electricity, and then steadies into its steady glow. These regular, mundane cadences have a way of diluting the sharper edges of the day, making them less urgent and more like small elements in a greater stillness. You notice the smell of the room, the faint musk of the sweater, the citrus of a soap dish, a hint of rain that has settled like a polite visitor. The scent weaves through the space the way a memory weaves through a conversation, softly, without insistence. You breathe it in because it is there, because the act of breathing is a kind of companion to the rest of the body. The sensations in your arms and legs subtly shift as you adjust your position, a movement that feels deliberate and unhurried. The cool of the window glass contrasts with the lamp's warmth, creating a small, satisfying temperature gradient that your skin appreciates without comment. There is an unscripted contentment in allowing the unanswered message to remain unanswered for now. It sits quietly on the shelf, with the other possibilities you will meet on a later day. Not abandoned, just paused. The evening is generous in this way. It holds both the thing you might say and the thing you might not say, and neither is more valuable because of action. The apartment acknowledges this indifference without judgment, simply holding the two mugs, the draped sweater, the softened cushion, as if these objects themselves have consented to the night's pace. You settle into a stillness that feels like a companion rather than a conclusion. Time becomes pliant. The minute hand moves along its circle, polite and unobtrusive, while the room maintains its steady, unremarkable hospitality. Outside, the streetlight washes the curtains in a cool glow that edges the warm lamplight. Inside, the ordinary textures of domestic life continue to speak in their low tongue. The whisper of fabric, the soft clink when the mug shifts, the barely audible creak of the floorboards adapting to the night's temperature. All of it folds together in a manner that is neither dramatic nor empty. It simply is. There is room here for a small, private wonder at how life can be both urgent and leisurely, how presence can be gentle without being performative. You rest with that knowledge like a hand on a familiar shoulder, an awareness that someone else might once have given you, and that you now carry quietly for yourself. The phone remains face down when you glance at it again. You feel neither compelled nor deprived. The moment holds you without asking for more. The hush of the apartment becomes not a void, but a texture, the sound of being adequately connected and softly unoccupied at once. The night continues its slow, steady cadence, and you remain in the light, an inhabitant of a small, intricately ordinary piece. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You sink a little deeper into the couch and notice how the cushion remembers the shape you make, a small imprint that softens into the fabric as the room settles around you. The lamp on the side table throws a warm circle across the coffee table, a small map of where things are kept. A couple of stacked books, a pair of glasses folded and waiting, a coaster with a faint ring where a mug sat earlier. There is a second mug, rimmed with a trace of steam that has long since quieted, folded into the scene as if it belongs to someone who might arrive later, or who has already moved on to another room. The presence of that cup feels like a comfort that does not demand any movement from you. You turn the phone over on the table so the black face looks up like calm water. Its screen is a small, dark mirror that does not ask you to lean in. Beyond the glass of the window, the city breathes in a rhythm you have learned to match, slow and unforced. Streetlights pool into soft patches on the pavement. A distant bus sighs, and a neighbor leaves their door open for a beat. The sound of a lock catching mingling with something like a hum. You have noticed these small nocturnes before. Tonight they are companions that do not need words. Later is a word that exists as a soft blur at the edge of what you can hold right now. It is not sharp enough to require a plan. It hangs in the room like a scent you can't quite name, not urgent, not heavy. Sometimes later arrives as a list of things that will press until they are addressed. Tonight it lies loose, like a scarf folded and put aside, its color present but without the need to drape it over your shoulders. You watch the way the light grazes the folds of a shawl thrown over the arm of an empty chair, and think about how things can be present without being immediate. You move your hand across the couch arm and feel the cool weave of the fabric, the small warm spot your palm leaves behind. The radio in the kitchen hums, playing a song you have heard before, but which now feels like a memory remade. Notes softened, tempo slowed. There is no requirement that you match the music's pace. The night allows a different kind of timing, one that is patient with missteps and pauses. You do not measure yourself against it. You listen and let the sound thread through you, without demanding a response. Your thoughts wander to the message you are not answering tonight, and you notice the way the thought arrives and then settles, like dust returning to a shelf. It is there, neat, finite, and lacking the sharp edges that can make a thing climb into your chest. You do not move toward your phone. You let the idea of later hover like a shape you are content to observe rather than fix. It is not an avoidance that feels frantic. It is merely a choice to let the night hold it in a space that does not tug. The apartment around you is full of small signs of lives shared. A pair of socks folded and placed on top of a book, a paperback with a bent spine resting under a lamp, a cardigan draped over the back of a chair, so that its sleeves hang like relaxed arms. These traces make the space feel inhabited and private. They are not displays, only evidence that others have found the same room to be a harbor. You notice the way these objects do not demand explanation. They are simply there, as steady as the lamp's glow. You are aware of the intimacy and the quiet. Someone's coffee, left to cool. The soft crease of a letter on the kitchen counter. But it is not a pressure. It is warmth, folded into ordinary objects. You consider the possibility of tomorrow in the gentlest sense. It comes as a soft shape, not as a structure to be built tonight. The future can be a list of undone things. but it can also be a thin veil of light beyond the window, a suggestion that more time is coming. There is no hurry in that. Your breath finds a slow cadence in keeping with the room. In, out, a small rise and fall that has nothing to prove. You notice your heartbeat under your hand and how even that steady drum does not need to quicken. There are papers on the table, receipts, a postcard, a note you once wrote to yourself, and tucked into the book you are using as a tray. You pick up the postcard, run a fingertip over the stamp, and set it down again. The action is light and unpressured. You are not collecting tasks as victories, you are noticing textures. You are letting your thoughts be pliant, not fixed into commitments. From somewhere across the hallway, a neighbor's low laughter slips in like a bright thread and then fades. It stirs a sense of company that is without claim. You imagine the ways that lives can brush past one another, leaving traces that are tender and non-demanding, an open door left for a moment, a stray scarf slung over a chair, a light kept on for a person who likes to arrive home slowly. In this room, these touches are part of the atmosphere. Familiar, unobtrusive, belonging without ceremony. At the window, the glass blurs the street's movement into a watercolor of motion. Cars pass as soft streaks, their taillights slanting like delicate punctuation. Far off, a neon sign changes color in a cycle you have come to accept as part of the city's nocturnal grammar. The night wraps around the building in a cool layer, but the interior holds warmth in measured amounts, the lamp, the mug, the chair. You move through this balance like someone stepping between islands, no rush to get anywhere in particular. Thoughts of answering, of sending an immediate text, of composing something that matches the tone of the day, float up like leaves on a pond and then drift away. You watch their gentle passage and allow yourself not to catch them. You have the sense that some conversations can breathe. They will expand and contract on their own schedule, shaped by the people who will inhabit them later. For now, the conversation that matters is the small one inside you, the quiet inventory of sensations, the noticing of the room, the ease of holding the present. You reach for the second mug, feel its residual warmth, and set it down with a slight clink that sounds like an acknowledgement rather than a claim. The sound moves through the room and settles against the walls, which have absorbed thousands of similar minor sounds. A plant on the windowsill leans toward the light, its leaves glossy and patient. You think of care as something slow and ongoing, not a task to be completed tonight. The future is suggested in the plant's steady reach, in the folded sleeve of a sweater waiting to be worn again. Later remains a soft promise, not a chore. It is an idea in the periphery that you can allow to be vague. You let it float without pinning it down, enjoying the space that allows a thing to exist without an immediate shape. The night invites an unfocused attention that does not require outcomes. You let images of future moments pass like frames of a film you could watch later, not because you must, but because they are part of the room's texture. You adjust your position and feel the slight creak of the couch as a small punctuation. Your hand brushes the blanket tossed across your knees. Its fibers are familiar, smelling faintly of the detergent used earlier in the week. There is comfort in the known, and there is also the quiet pleasure of not needing to narrate it. You hold this small, private satisfaction and let it be enough for the time being. The night keeps to its own slow rhythm, and you keep to yours. Later is a gentle concept that moves at its own pace, unhurried and distant. You do not need to act on it now. You allow the idea of later to remain an uncolored, spacious thing at the edge of your mind, available, not insistent. You notice how that absence of urgency settles like a hand on your shoulder, easy, unpressing, companionable. You are here, in a room lit softly and held by familiar things, and that is a kind of attending that requires no answer tonight. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. You sit with the low light as if it were a shape you could lean into, a familiar object that has been waiting for you all evening. It pulls softly across the arm of the couch, slips under the rim of a stack of books, and warms the edge of a sweater folded on the back of a chair. Outside the window, the city makes a slow, indifferent soundtrack of distant engines and the occasional footfall. Inside, everything moves on a smaller scale. Your hands rest on the fabric of the cushion, fingertips tracing the line where one texture meets another, a small, private map of the room that you can follow without thinking. The phone sits face down on the coffee table, its glass dark and reflective, like a little quiet mirror. It catches a stray gleam from the lamp and returns a softened version of the room. The mug with a cooling ring, the bent paper bookmark peeking out of a novel you meant to finish earlier. The second mug, emptied and rinsed, that keeps the impression of someone else's presence near. The absence of buzzing or light feels like a permission that arrived without anyone granting it. One of those tiny, generous things that let the chest unclench a notch. There is stillness here, but it is not empty. It is the kind of stillness that remembers the presence of bodies and voices. The pillow beside you preserves the contour, where a friend leaned back for a while. The jacket slung over the chair still carries the warmth of a shoulder. Little traces gather in corners. A coaster with a ring of condensation, a pair of gloves folded together, a handwritten note tucked beneath a book. They are not proof of anything dramatic, only evidence of company, of small exchanges that have happened and now soften into memory. The room holds them without attention, like the way a familiar melody continues beneath conversation. You find yourself counting, not numbers, but items of tenderness. A chipped mug with a mark from a favorite lip, a slightly bent postcard someone left behind, the handwriting on the back partial, the ink faded at the margins, a playlist that finished hours ago and left its last notes hanging at the edge of the evening. These things are uncomplicated in their meaning, and complex in the way they settle into you. They make the space feel chosen, curated with casual care rather than spectacle. It matters that someone thought enough to fold a blanket and drape it over the back of a chair, the way it suggests an earlier knowing, that it might be colder, that comfort might be needed, that you would not be alone in noticing. The night air at the window moves in shallow drafts, carrying the city's cooler breath into the room. It brushes against curtains, lifts them slightly, and then hushes. The panes collect ghosted reflections of street lamps, soft amber discs that seem to hover just beyond reach. You look at them and feel a small, steady ease. There is no pressing demand to make anything happen, no list of responses waiting to reclaim your attention. The day's momentum has spent itself, and what remains is a slow reconsideration of what to carry forward. The darkness outside frames the intimacy inside, a gentle reminder that what matters here is internal and chosen, not broadcast. There is a particular kind of quiet that belongs to spaces where people have been known and accepted enough to sit in their complexity. It appears in the ordinary objects when they are allowed to be imperfect. A seam that pulls slightly on a cushion, a lamp with a shade that leans, a dish that chips and is kept anyway because it holds someone's handwriting or a smear of sauce from a night of shared cooking. These small flaws are not failures. They are evidence of use, of ritual, of a private kind of care. When you move your hand across the coffee table, your palm grazes the rim of the dark phone and the faint warmth of earlier use. An imprint that means something has been held and then set down deliberately. The thought of messages lingers like a shape at the edge of a mirror. You imagine the words as light, brief and bright, then dim. Some of them might be simple courtesies, a joke that landed, a question that will wait until tomorrow. Others might be heavier, requiring more of you than your present self wants to give. The point of the night is not to resolve those variations. It is to make space for the fact of them without obligating motion. You watch the dark rectangle of the screen, and it does not call. You do not explain why your thumb does not reach. You only feel the steadiness of not reaching, which carries its own quiet dignity. There is a softness to the air in the room, like fabric that remembers the shape of a shoulder. You breathe in, noticing the faint scent of detergent from the towel on the radiator, the hint of citrus from a candle long since burned down. Small sounds gather and disperse. A radiator sighs. A distant siren becomes a note. The fridge cycles with a low, patient hum. These are ordinary sounds, but in the stillness, they become companions, something to hold up against the idea of urgency. They remind you that life continues, that the world beyond the window is in motion, but that motion need not demand your immediate answer. You find comfort in the idea that privacy is a kind of safety, not because of secrets or fear, but because of the right to choose how and when to appear. The room feels like a threshold in that way, a place where you can step back from the small performance of being available to everyone, letting the persona you bring to the day be folded and placed on the back of a chair. There is no need to tidy those edges neatly tonight. The sweater left, draped over the arm, the uneven stack of dishes in the sink, the playlist cued and then paused. These are all accepted as part of the surface texture of living. They are not evidence of neglect, they are the honest marks of evenings lived with company and care. Time here moves in unhurried increments. 1 minute stretches into 5, then 10. Not in a way that stretches thin, but in a way that thickens, like a stew slowly finding its depth. You watch the light shift, the shadows lengthen against the wall, the little flicker of the city beyond the glass deepen into a softer darkness. Your thoughts do not require polishing. They arrive, sit with you for a while, and then release themselves back into the air. You follow them like a trailing thread, gentle curiosity without interrogation. There is an ease in letting the mind slow and allowing the edges of urgency to blur and soften. A faint warmth remains where someone else leaned against the couch earlier, a residual comfort that does not press but lingers like shared history, compacted into a small patch of upholstery. It is enough to remind you that intimacy can be slow and non-demanding, a presence that does not consume. The second mug on the table speaks of a shared pause, of 1 moment extended over 2 cups, conversation dwindling into comfortable silence. That silence is not absence, it is a shared fabric, woven from small acknowledgments and the permission to be as you are. You keep your hand near that space, feeling contained by it rather than compelled by it. At some point, you let the idea of unanswered messages become simply one more quiet thing in the room. It is a surface to place your attention upon, and then to leave. You think of replies written with care, and of the ones that will wait. The distinction is not moral so much as practical. A response demands an energy you do not wish to expend tonight. Leaving it pending is not neglect. It is an offering of rest, a small, private decision that honors the boundaries of the moment. The dark screen on the table does not push back. It accepts that tonight the conversation is paused. You notice how the small domestic details cushion the pause. A blanket half spread on the ottoman, a pen with a little chewed edge waiting beside an open notebook, the fading aroma of tea. These objects form a gentle perimeter around the quiet, keeping it from being too sharp. They are the kind of things that speak of a life lived with others who know how to make space, a friend who left a note tucked under a coaster, a neighbor who borrowed a book and returned it with a margin of dog-eared pages, showing what they lingered on. These traces of mutual, unspoken attention hover in the room like soft punctuation. You allow the stillness to thicken without turning heavy. There is a weightlessness to the way the night leans in, accepting unfinished sentences and unanswered echoes. The world outside continues its motion, But inside, the room holds a patient pause. You are not obliged to respond to the day's needs right now. You are not required to perform understanding or availability. Instead, you exist in this gently furnished hush, letting the pause be enough. The night allows you to be present and absent at once, to hold space for what came before without hastening toward an outcome. In that allowance, the room becomes a kind of quiet companion, steady and unobtrusive, holding you without asking for anything in return. The lamp is low enough that the edges of things soften. Light pools on the ottoman where a sweater lies, folded the way someone left it earlier, neat without effort. On the coffee table, a second mug cools beside the one you were using. A faint ring of steam like a last small gesture, a reminder that there was company not long ago, voices carried in the space between sentences, rather than in sentences themselves. The phone is face down on the soft stack of magazines, its dark glass reflecting the warm arc of the lamp, as if the device is taking a breath with the room. Your attention used to be a tight thread, pulled taut toward the shape of tomorrow, toward messages, to-do lists, imagined replies. Tonight it loosens like an old sweater that finally stretches at the seams, and the looseness feels like permission rather than avoidance. You notice how thoughts of what might be, who might answer, what might be asked, how something might change, arrive as small, patient things that do not demand to be carried. They settle on the periphery and then stay there, like distant traffic beyond the window, a continuous hum that does not have to be followed. There is a quiet economy to this room, an arrangement of small domestic proofs that people have been here and cared enough to leave evidence of care behind. A stray scarf is draped over the back of a chair, the kind that smells faintly of someone else's cologne or their dry shampoo, a scent that is more about proximity than possession. A pair of keys rests on the console, polished where fingers have moved them from pocket to table and back. A folded pair of pants sits atop a stack of books, their spines familiar, titles half remembered. All of it suggests a life made in conversation and comfortable interruption, not a life of pristine separation. You let your eyes move slowly across these objects, not cataloging so much as recognizing. Each thing is a small signpost of connection. The second mug that cooled because someone had to leave early, the blanket retucked because another reached for it in the dark and found it pulled, the lamp that clicked on when a hand needed light to read. These traces are tender and ordinary. They hold warmth without needing anything from you in return. Outside, the city is a watercolor of lights, softened further by the distance and the glass. A bus sighs away in the far street and becomes nothing more than texture. The apartment exhales with the same slow timing. There is no demand coming from the night, even the unsettled corners of your mind. The unfinished messages that could be answered with a sentence, the plans that could be rearranged by a single word, seem to lose their sharpness, as if viewed through a window with a thin film of condensation. The edges blur. The urgency evaporates into a gentle curiosity about what will be rather than a compulsion to make it so. You think of the message thread that blinked at you earlier, the tiny white dot that announced itself with a ping and then waited with patient insistence. You remember the habitual impulse to shape a reply, to smooth something out with carefully chosen words. Tonight, that impulse is a small, courteous visitor who sits in the corner of the room and reads the room rather than expecting to be the center of it. You imagine possible replies passing by, like commuters on the sidewalk. Some glance up, some keep their eyes on their phone, some stop to tie a shoe, and you find that none of them need to take you by the hand. There is a particular softness in the way decisions seem optional now. Nothing here insists on resolution. The future feels like a drawer left slightly open. You could reach in later when your fingers want to, and not before. That loosened attention does not empty the room of care. On the contrary, it makes the care more abundant, because it no longer has to be fixed on outcomes. It is enough that things have been tended to, that someone placed a kettle back on the stove, that a chair was pulled in to indicate presence before leaving. Presence is not always a verb that calls for action. Sometimes it is an atmosphere, a shared light that makes all the small things read as marks of having been seen. You notice the habitual narrative your mind likes to tell, scenarios that run like little rehearsals across the ceiling. They are gentle rehearsals. What you will say, how you will say it, the cadence of a response that will make everything align. They do not feel like instructions tonight. Instead, they feel like trains of thought you can watch from the window without needing to hop on board. The route is there, the stops are predictable, but the conductor does not expect you to step inside. It is enough to trace the route with your eyes and then watch the light shift as the train continues. The warmth in the room is not only thermal, it is built from the knowledge that the people who fill this space have left things that make it livable. A coat tossed over a chair where it can be grabbed in the morning, a notebook with a pen lying across its open page, a pair of glasses on the bedside table, as if someone had simply set down their gaze and not picked it up again. These are small acts of domestic intimacy that do not shout. They are the quiet scaffolding of a life that includes other people, where privacy has been chosen and respected, and where disclosure is not a performance, but a fact of living under the same roof and knowing when to close the blinds. You find the sound of the radiator comforting in a way words cannot be. It cycles and lets go, a mechanical breath that matches the pulse of your own chest. The heat washes over your hands where they rest on your knees, on the fabric of the sweater, on the thin skin of the evening. It is a simple exchange of temperature. It is not an answer to anything. It does not try to fix the shape of tomorrow. It merely is, and that enoughness feels deliberate. There is no need to tally unfinished moments. You do not inventory regrets or press for closure. The day leaves its traces, a receipt tucked into a cookbook, a smear of something on the rim of a mug, a note half tucked under a coaster. These things are like the footprints of the day. They say that life happened and then it softened. There is a patient contentment in realizing that not everything requires completion tonight. Some threads will be picked up again. Some will hang in the air like the last chords of a song, reverberating softly without needing a final note. You let the thought that usually reaches for tomorrow be light and optional. You notice the way your breathing lengthens when you stop trying to blow on the embers of future anxieties. There is a domestic, chosen warmth in that slowing, a kind of siblinghood with the objects and the memories that share the room. It is a kinship not made of declarations, but of small mutual accommodations. Scarves shared over shoulders, lights left on so a late returner will find their way. Mugs set out for someone who arrives late from the subway. These accommodations are signs of care that do not demand reciprocity in the moment. They are a repository for the possibility of future connection, but they do not hinge on it. The phone remains dark, a small, smooth absence that does not need filling. You understand, in a way that is neither triumphant nor resigned, that the night is not a place for resolution. It is a place for the gentle unwinding of attention, for letting plans exist as possibilities rather than obligations. The room acknowledges this with humility. Curtains drawn, a music player tucked away, a stray sock folded into itself. It holds the evening like a hand cupped around a warm thing, not to possess it, but to keep it from rolling away. Your thoughts become less like arrows and more like paper lanterns, floating up and softening the air as they go. The future is not collapsed into a single point of pressure. It widens into a sky of small lights, each one steady and quiet. There is room for uncertainty here, but it is an uncertainty that does not press or insist. It is an open window that lets cool air in without asking for answers. You remain in the space between contact and withdrawal, in the place where attention is allowed to ease its grip and simply notice the shape of the night. The objects around you, the remnants of shared time, the lamp's patient circle of light, all of it conspire to make a gentle claim. Tomorrow can wait, and tonight will keep its own rhythms. The window holds the city's weight like a quiet photograph, a grid of amber, pale blue, and the occasional distant neon that refuses to be loud. The curtains are half closed, the fabric catching the light in a slow ripple, where a draft slips underneath. You have the lamp on, a soft pool of light that keeps one corner of the room warm, while the rest settles into cooler shades. On the nightstand, the phone is a dark rectangle with a small, polite glow at its edge, where an unread message waits. It sits there, like a small thing you can choose to look at or not, no louder than the second mug on the kitchen counter or the folded sweater on the chair back. The room smells like a day tucked away, the faint citrus of dish soap, the linen of the sheets, a hint of the cafe you stopped in earlier, the one with music low enough to hear the conversations as textures rather than words. You can still feel the warmth of being seen as a kind of gentle pressure behind your sternum, the way visibility settles into your shoulders and makes them softer. Tonight, the visible pieces of you have been arranged carefully, coats on hooks, a stack of books by the lamp, a mug that hasn't quite cooled. It all sits together like a small ecosystem that doesn't demand anything from you. The message itself is a small light in the corner of your evening. Its presence is precise and uncomplicated, a circle, a tiny line, a color against glass. It doesn't command your view. It merely exists within your field of attention. When you notice it, your attention folds toward it for a moment, like touching a page to check the texture, and then refocuses on what is nearer, the immediate architecture of the room and the way your body is negotiating stillness. You move slowly through the space, letting surfaces register again. The coolness of the night air where it finds you, the soft give of the cushion under your hips, the muted clink when you set the mug down and then decide to pick it up again. There is an easy rhythm to the room now that the evening has done its work. Little sounds stitch themselves into a pattern, a distant tire whispering along wet pavement, the building's pipes breathing, the refrigerator settling into a low hum. These are not interruptions so much as the room speaking in its own voice, a language of small mechanical exhalations and the tapped-out cadence of someone else's footsteps on a neighboring staircase. You notice these things without needing to mark them. They are familiar neighbors who move through the walls and leave no trace but a sense of continuity. Once earlier, you let the light of your phone open into conversation and the world reached you in a way that felt sharp and whole. Now, the phone sits like a souvenir of that reach, a reminder of a moment that exists somewhere in the evening, but is not the evening itself. The thought of opening it again is neither a task nor a temptation. It is a fact alongside others. You trace the rim of the mug with your thumb, slow and absent-minded, and the contact is enough to keep you present. Time feels porous, a minute expands, a stretch of silence thickens, and the idea of responding to anything loses the urgency it might have held earlier. There is a small domesticity to the scene that makes everything softer. A folded sweater bears the shape of your body where it was folded away. Its sleeve keeps the memory of the evening's composition. A second mug on the counter implies a recent visitor, or the habit of making too much coffee for one. The plates in the sink are stacked with an ease that says someone has cleaned as much as they needed to, leaving the rest in a hush. These traces of life are not statements, they are belongings that reassure without speaking. They suggest companionship without requiring it, a presence in the past that leaves the night open. Your hands know the room by touch at this hour. Fingers find the grain of the table, the seam of the blanket, the weight of the book you set aside unopened. You let your palms rest on the surface of familiar things and feel their coolness, their textures, the small resistance of fabric against skin. The lamp casts a circle over the pages of the book, And the letters in that little illuminated pool look patient enough to wait. The phone, meanwhile, is patient too. It can be picked up tomorrow. It can be left where it lies. Tonight it is just one small object among many. What was pressing earlier, the expectation, the quickening, has softened into a background hum. The night takes those edges and rounds them. Possibility is present as an elegant, unfussy shape, not a demand. You can hold the idea of an answer or put it away like a folded letter. Both sit in the room equally accessible. The immediate things, fabric, light, breath, are louder than that small screen. When you let your focus fall back to the lamp, you notice the dust motes turning very slowly in the beam, tiny planets into their own orbit. The city beyond your glass keeps moving, but its motion feels far enough away to be more like weather than motion needing a response. There is something restful about attention that does not have to travel outward. You spend a long time simply looking at the small map of your apartment, the chair with the jacket, the kettle that cooled on the stove, the sill where the night collects. Each object has a history of earlier hands, of gestures this evening and those before, and each holds an uncomplicated testimony to life being lived without urgency. The phone's message is part of that testimony. It was a point of contact, a shard of conversation, a thought sent into the room. It does not hold power over the night. It sits, and the night surrounds it. You tuck the blanket tighter around your knees and let the fabric's weight remind you of your limits in the gentlest possible way. The world outside continues with its small announcements, someone laughing softly on the street, a bus letting out a sigh. But these are not interruptions. They are ornaments to the quiet. In the lamp's light, the cup leaves a faint ring on the coaster, an impression like a memory pressed into paper. This is enough detail to occupy thought for a long time if you allow it. The pull to do anything about the message recedes, replaced by the immediate business of being present to these small, ordinary things. There is no need for closure. The message will remain when it needs to. It will be answered if it should be, or left, if that is how things unfold. For now, the room is what matters. Its textures, its sounds, its particular kind of hush. You let attention linger on the things in reach, the things that make the space your own. The night gathers around you like a slow, generous fabric, and the small blue light on your phone becomes less an insistence and more a soft, distant thing, an object in the room, like the second mug or the sweater on the chair, allowed to exist without immediate consequence. The warmth of the lamp, the coolness of the window pane, the steady quiet of the building. These are closer now than any possibility the screen might suggest. You are in the middle of the room with the lamp low, and the city softened to a watercolor beyond the glass. The light here is warm enough to make the cushions look like little islands, like places where ordinary things collect and stay. There is a second mug on the low table, the glaze chipped in a familiar spot, where an elbow must have knocked it once and been forgiven. The mug holds only a memory of steam now. A faint ring marks where warmth once was. Nearby, the phone lies face down, a small dark panel that does nothing to demand you. The message is there, folded into the night by the simple geometry of the screen, but it offers no sound. It is part of the room's architecture, like the lamp or the stack of paperbacks by the armchair, present, arranged, allowed. You move slowly enough that the floor remembers each step. The apartment breathes in that way that comes after company, after messages, after visibility that has been luminous and then put away. There are traces, a folded shirt at the back of the chair where it was set down, a scarf over the radiator that smells faintly of perfume and of the late afternoon street. A jacket is draped on the back of the door with the posture of someone who might come back. These objects are quiet testimonies of other presences and of the choice to keep the house modestly open to memory. They are not claims. They are simply parts of the room as it arranges itself around you. Outside, a bus lets go of its brakes like a long exhale, the sound traveling across the layers of glass and brick. Inside, the radiator makes that gentle, domestic series of clicks as it cools. Somewhere far down the block, music thins out into the hum of tires and conversations that no longer need to be attended to. Your phone, for its part, is simply an object on a surface. It rests in the dark. A small fraction of you notes the unread message like a stone in a pocket. There, tangible but also inert. There is no requirement attached to it other than the fact of its existence. That is enough. You notice the texture of the couch where you settled earlier. The fabric carries the soft impression of your body. The cushion remembers the shape of your shoulders, the way you tend to curl your legs when the evening stretches. Your fingers find the seam of the armrest and linger there, feeling the coolness of the fabric that faces away from the light. The world feels slow. Your breathing keeps the same steady rhythm as the pipes and the distant city breath. There is a kind of generosity in the way the room holds this rhythm without comment. The second mug invites speculation, not obligation. There is comfort in not needing to explain why it is there. Maybe it was left from a conversation over tea. Perhaps it was rinsed and put aside for later. Perhaps it belongs to someone who has already gone. The fact that its presence suggests a companion, an exchange earlier in the day, is enough. It sits with a casual familiarity, like a sentence left mid-thought on a notebook page. You understand that some sentences can wait in quiet rooms. Some messages are simply part of the night. You can feel the texture of choice as something soft and unsharp. It is the difference between a decision that must be made and a decision that can be held like a pebble in the hand, turned over, and looked at when it feels wanted. The message on the phone is one such pebble. There is time between now and any eventual action, and that space holds you without demanding that you fill it. The city outside is busy in its own way, but inside these walls the tempo has slowed enough that the edges of small things are suddenly visible. The mug's glaze, the sweater's collar, the faint bruise of shadow under the lamp. Each detail registers because the world is not asking you to move quickly. You remember the light earlier, the way faces softened when you laughed, the particular cadence of someone's story. There is a warmth in memory, not the heat of urgency, but the comfortable residual glow of being seen. The room collects these imprints like coins in a jar. There is no need to catalog them. They are allowed to rest where they are. The message on the phone might be part of those imprints, another coin added to the jar, but it does not rearrange the contents. It does not require an accounting. There is safety and privacy tonight. The curtains have been drawn to a level that keeps the world outside visible in soft shapes. The movement of traffic, the occasional silhouette of a passerby, under a streetlight, close enough to feel human, far enough to preserve the intimacy of the interior. The air carries the scent of something clean and domestic. Linen detergent, perhaps, and the tiny ghost of the meal you made earlier. It is a neutral, comforting aroma that makes the room into a small, comprehensible universe. There is a hush in the way the night moves through the space, like a blanket, that is heavy enough to keep drafts out but light enough that it does not smother. Your hands rest on your lap. You are aware of them in the same gentle, unobtrusive way. You are aware of the message. They are part of the room's present, unremarkable and reassuring. There is a rhythm here that is not about doing, but about being. You feel the slow passage of the hour, like a tide that both erases and preserves. The world's edges soften, you do not push. You allow the presence of the message to be one of many small things that fill the room, but do not occupy it wholly. Memory appears in small flashes. The way a friend's laughter hangs in a blue-lit kitchen, a hand that reached across the table to steady a plate, a voice that explained a joke and then let it sit. These are domestic intimacies that do not require performance. They are gentle markers of chosen family warmth, of a life woven out of quiet exchanges. The scarf folded on the radiator, the second mug, the half-read book on the windowsill, they all speak of a network of small kindnesses. They reassure you that you belong to a kind of domesticity that is made of practical tenderness rather than declaration. There is an ease in the room's unmadeness. Clothes are not tidied, dishes are stacked with no pretense of perfection. The lamp throws a pool of light that is obedient to gravity. Things are as they are, and you are as you are. The message waits, and in the room's patient architecture, it becomes one small, luminous object among many. It is not a summons, it does not press against the ribs. It is simply another element of the nightscape. Your thoughts do not need to be linear. They wander through the apartment like someone moving from room to room, pausing to touch a photograph, to read the spine of a book, to fold the corner of a page. In this wandering, there is no rush to arrive. The edges of the night are blurred like watercolor bleed, where meaning can soften and not demand to be sharpened. You notice a softness in the way your breathing aligns with the hum of the building systems, a quiet concord that feels like belonging. Outside, a taxi turns the corner, and the sound is distant, stained by brick and time. Inside, the lamp keeps its constant glow. The phone screen remains dark. The message remains a presence, but not a pressure. The room itself gives the sense that things can be held open and unresolved without losing their warmth. Near silence settles not as an emptiness, but as a space that holds traces of laughter, of conversation, of presence, and keeps them gentle. There is a kind of merciful patience to the night, an allowance for things to simply exist as part of an ongoing domestic story that does not demand conclusion. You stay in that tolerance in the room that is quietly composed and whole. The objects around you are patient witnesses. The mug, the sweater, the phone, they are all small ways the evening articulates itself, not as an argument to be won, but as a sequence of soft spaces that your life moves through. Nothing is closed, nothing is urgent. The night lets questions and messages and memories be porous, and in that porosity, there is room to breathe. The city continues to draw its slow map beyond the glass, and the room keeps its small, private cartography of light and shadow and the unhurried hum of living. Welcome to this quiet place where you don't have to explain yourself. The light from the lamp pools softly on the coffee table, a warm circle that keeps doing what it has been doing for the last hour, holding a small area of the room steady while everything beyond it loosens. The rest of the apartment is a gentle dim, corners softened into suggestions rather than edges. Night presses its coolness to the glass of the window, and beyond the pane, the city is polite and distant, offering a few slow breaths of traffic and the occasional blink of far lights. Inside, the air smells faintly of the evening, soap from the quick wash earlier, the trace of someone's last cup of tea, the linen of a shirt folded and left on the back of a chair. Your phone lies screened down on the arm of the couch. The surface is cool where it meets the fabric. The small weight of it, settled into a spot made familiar over weeks of evenings like this. There might be a light pulse at the top of the device, or nothing at all. It is only an object in the room, laying where it lay after the last reach, after the last small checking that felt more automatic than urgent. The message sits, or perhaps it does not. Either way, answering does not require proof of your care tonight. The world beyond this window continues at its pace, and your apartment keeps its own. A second mug sits at the other end of the table, a slight ring of condensation where it was set down and then left. It speaks of company earlier in the day, of someone's hand that left its warmth on the handle, of a conversation that needed time to settle into memory rather than reply. Those hours of visibility, the catching up, the small confessions that happen between bites and laughter, did their work already. Whatever threads were present earlier now unspool without needing further action. You notice the quiet generosity of that not every exchange requires a signing off tonight, that some things are allowed to rest as they are. There is a sweater folded over the back of a chair with a familiarity to its fold, a practiced way it was tucked that says it will be there tomorrow. Near its hem, a faint smear of something from the day's life, coffee perhaps, or a smear of paint from a hurried margin of a project. Reminds you gently that life here is lived and left, and sometimes returned to. The apartment is a canvas of small interruptions made domestic. A stack of dishes drying under the light, a book face down on the pillow, with a bookmark not yet thought about, a pair of keys by the bowl, jangling just slightly when the draft from the window nudges the curtains. The radiator breathes in slow cycles, an old machine, content with its rhythm. Each exhale is a small comfort, a soft mechanical heartbeat that lives on the same frequency as your own settling. Outside, a bus sighs away from the corner, and someone in building across the street moves a curtain with a hush, a private motion mirrored in many apartments. These sounds do not demand you match them. They only exist alongside you, companionable without being intrusive. You move through the space with quiet care. Fingers brush the spine of the book on the pillow, then leave it. The lamp switch responds with a familiar click, and the light holds steady. Your hand finds the cool glass of the window for a moment, the city beyond textured with haze and distance. There is a reflection, the room nested within the glass, layered against the night. For a while, the reflection is more interesting than whatever lies outside. Your silhouette, the curve of the couch, the muted glow of the lamp. The reflection does not ask to be read aloud. It merely shows what the night already knows. There is a softness in the way the cushions remember your shape. The couch has been occupied by you enough that its softness knows where you like to sit, how you like to fold your legs, how the arm supports your shoulder when you turn toward the window. These domestic habits are a kind of language without words. The placement of a blanket over an ankle, the gentle tug of a throw pillow to the side, the careful sliding of a mug onto a coaster so the wood beneath it does not stain. They are small acts that acknowledge your own continuing presence without fanfare. An unnoticed song plays somewhere far off, not so much heard as felt as a distant warmth in the ribs of the city. It could be someone's playlist leaking through an open window, the kind of music chosen for its comfortable loyalty rather than its demand for attention. It wraps itself loosely around the edges of the room, not trying to fill the silence, but to sit beside it. The silence in this place is generous. It does not press or teach. It simply offers a space in which you can be, without explanation. Thoughts come in small, non-insistent waves. A line from a message you read earlier returns with the lightness of something not needing immediate action. Another thought is a memory. Eyes meeting across a table, laughter halting. A moment before it finds its rhythm again, a touch on an elbow that was permission, and an ordinary thing, all at once. These moments do not demand being replayed. They are present in the room as soft evidence that the day had depth. You allow them to exist without trying to archive them or resolve them. That permission feels like a slow exhale. The night keeps a particular kind of privacy. Curtains are drawn to allow the city to do what it does without inviting it in. The warm interior light offers an intimacy that is quiet and solid, a kind of safety that comes from the knowledge of small things being in their place. You trust that the phone will still be there in the east morning, that the second mug will dry in the sink, that the sweater will still be folded in its familiar way. Trust here does not have to be spelled out. It is the ambient result of the apartment's ordinary readiness for the next day. There is a soft sense of kinship in the traces left on surfaces. A note on the fridge, perhaps, A quick list of groceries written in someone else's hand and left for the person who will read it tomorrow. A pair of shoes by the door, one slightly askew. These marks suggest lives that intersect sometimes and keep a respectful distance at others. They offer the kind of chosen family warmth that is steady without spectacle. Gestures that say, I was here, and I remember you are here too. You watch the way the lamp makes little halos on the page of the open book, and the thought of replying to any message slides further into the background, like the slow dimming of the more urgent parts of the day. There is no need to explain why you may answer, later, or not at all. The presence of the unread message is just another quiet object in the room, not a summons. It is possible to sit with it without letting it reframe the night's mood. Time here is unhurried. It is measured by small intervals, the way the light shifts, the slow cooling of the tea mug, the tiny blink of the apartment plants responding to the diminishing warmth. There is no pressure coming from any direction to change this pace. The city will keep its errands and its comings and goings. The apartment will remain a small harbor where gestures can be slow and soft and uncostly. You let yourself notice the steadiness of ordinary things. A spoon resting in a bowl, a lamp cord tucked away, the steadiness of the radiator's breath. Each detail is a point in a gentle constellation, and together they create a sky under which you can be quiet and unbothered. The night does not require performance. It offers the possibility of presence that is small and unadorned. In the final stretch of the evening, the room feels slightly blurred around the edges in the best way. Shapes soften and soften again until everything is a suggestion. The mug, the sweater, the book, the lamp's halo. There is no tidy resolution on the horizon, nor is one necessary. The night holds whatever might come next without demand. The light keeps its circle, the city keeps its distance, and you remain here, contained in this gentle interior, where replies can wait and the world outside can continue, patient and unpressing.